Mesdames, Messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders, welcome. I'm very happy to be with you once again for the annual general meeting of Eurazeo. This is an important occasion, and it's the opportunity for us to bring together the Eurazeo family, its shareholders, its senior managers, the teams, the board members, the management team of the companies we accompany, and we will take whatever time is needed in order to have a discussion on the development of our group and its future ambitions. I would now request that Gideco Holding, represented by Mr. Emmanuel Russell and Mr. Olivier Merveilleux de Vigneault, the members who are to be the tellers, and I would like to thank them for agreeing to do this particular job. I recommend that we appoint Mr. Nicolas Huet, the company secretary of Eurazeo, as the secretary of the general meeting, and I will give him the floor so that he can remind us about the legal formalities. Ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders, 2018 was a particularly important year for our company. You have received the convening notice. You will find the report of the management board in the registration document. This is a mixed annual general meeting, further to the convening notice that was published on the BALO on the 18th of March, the convening notice which were published on the 8th of April, the letters convening the meeting and those sent out by email contain all the information. They contain the agenda of the general meeting, and they are available to you with the Bureau of the General Meeting, as well as the other documents required by law. No shareholder has exercised his or her right to put a particular resolution on the agenda. All bearer shareholders or registered shareholders have been duly convened consistent with regulatory requirements. We have drawn up an attendance list that each of you will have signed coming into the room, which has also the ballot sheet. Our statutory auditors are with us in the room. We have some journalists with us in the room. This is therefore a public meeting, and this general meeting is being broadcast on our website. I will give you the name of the shareholders and the number of shares later on, and I can tell you that the provisional quorum that we have enables us to go ahead with this annual general meeting. The attendance sheet will be closed at 10:30. Thank you very much, and I will hand back to Mr. Michel David Vaille.
Mesdames, Messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders, 2018 was an extremely important year for our company. Eurazeo has undergone transformation, it has diversified, it has brought in changes to its management team and pursued its international growth strategy. These changes were undertaken consistent with the history of our company. They have enabled us to adjust to the deep changes that our economy is going through and the changes around the world, and in order for us to be able to rise to the challenge of an ever more complex environment. In many ways, 2018 reflected the paradox of our time. It created opportunities for growth and also brought about great uncertainty. In Western countries, economic growth was robust, notwithstanding what we may be a temporary slowdown at the beginning of the year, and this trend was particularly evident in the United States. However, this strong economic growth coincides with social, political difficulties in many countries. In economic terms, 2019 is considered to be a high-risk year for global growth, in particular by the International Monetary Fund. The trade war between China and the United States has created uncertainty for the global economy. The rise in protectionism, all these factors present obstacles to investment. In Europe, the never-ending saga of Brexit and the prospect of a Euro-skeptic wave at the next European elections creates concern for the future of the continent. In France, uncertainty prevails, and yet, notwithstanding this uncertain environment, the private equity industry posts continued growth. This strong momentum is due to excellent results because private equity provides unquestionably added value, and we should be very happy about this. Eurazeo provides you access to private equity through a quoted liquid stock. This context means that investors are more demanding. The expectations of the stakeholders vis-à-vis the company, the need for the latter to take into account social and environmental considerations have never been as strong. This is a challenge, but above all, an opportunity for a company such as Eurazeo, which has been able to undergo the transformation and to put societal responsibility at the heart of its investment process. Against this backdrop of uncertainty, stimulated by new technologies which are revolutionizing our practices, the unusual nature of the Eurazeo business model is extremely relevant. The group has moved ahead. It has shown that it listens carefully to the needs and expectations of investors and stakeholders. The particularly intense activity of the 8 investment categories of the group testify to this. Over 90 companies have either joined or been financed by the group this year. Asset turnover has also been significant. 2018 was a year of strategic transformation for our group. The acquisition of Idinvest has enabled Eurazeo to add 3 new businesses: innovation, capital, private debt, and secondary funds. This diversification is not new. It's not a novelty, since this trend began 8 years ago with the inclusion of a business line dedicated to SMEs, and it has been very successful. Looking beyond these new businesses, we have new talents which will help us to grow. The strategic partnership with Rhône has bolstered Eurazeo's share and activity on a transatlantic basis. Indeed, one of the key features of the strategic transformation is the increase in the activity in management for third-party investors. Furthermore, in addition to the alliance with Idinvest, 2018 was a very important year for fundraising, with 2.3 billion euros raised since the 1st of January. The diversification of our businesses confirms the value of our business model, and Eurazeo therefore combines the best of both worlds for its shareholders: an entrepreneurial spirit without any structural debt, combined with management results which ensure recurring income. This year was also provided us with an opportunity to confirm the strength of our ties with the Decaux family, who became a major shareholder almost 2 years ago. This mutual understanding is extremely valuable. It is based on a shared vision of the investment business, and we share the long-term approach to this. It is also based on our attachment to the independence of Eurazeo, which guarantees the success of our company. 2018 was also a particularly important year for Eurazeo in terms of governance. Virginie Morgan has been appointed as chairperson of the management board just over a year ago. Coming after Patrick Sayer, she has devoted all of her passion, ambition, and talent to the development and growth of our company. I wish to emphasize the quality of the relationship between the supervisory board and the management board of Eurazeo, and therefore I have every confidence in our ability, our group's ability to successfully continue its development. 2019 has got off to a very dynamic start in terms of investment. It will enable Eurazeo to further grow its investment business lines and to exploit opportunities that create value. Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to hand over to Virginie Morgon.
Merci beaucoup, Michel. Mesdames.
Thank you, Michel. Ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, welcome to the annual general meeting for 2019. This is a very important moment in the year, as Michel was saying, bringing us together with the heads of companies that we support. It's a very important meeting. It's an opportunity for us to report to you on the development and transformation of your company. And it is also an opportunity for us to engage in dialogue, and we want this dialogue to be as open as possible in a very good spirit. We like bringing you together, we enjoy answering your questions, and we like showing you in a pragmatic way the work that we've been doing on the ground and the work of our teams. I see many familiar faces after so many years, and I'm very happy that we're back at Pavillon Gabriel, which is an excellent venue that has been renovated. So it's back to our traditional venue, and we're very happy to be here. I'd like to welcome our new shareholders. Welcome to you all. Thank you for your faith in us. All the board members of Eurazeo are here in the first and second rows. They're supporting you. They're doing an excellent job in accompanying the companies under the chairmanship of Michel David Veil. And I'm also very happy to welcome three of the founders of MCH Private Equity. This is a company that has a long history in Spain, one of the leading players in Spanish private equity. You saw a little while back we took a minority stake of 25% in the share capital of MCH. So I'm happy to welcome Jaime, José Manuel, and Ramon, who are all here, all three of them. Welcome and thank you for being with the Eurazeo Group, and we'll talk a bit more about MCH later. This general meeting is going to be full of information in terms of testimony, interventions, and I will be handing over to Olivier Millet, Sophie Flack, and Marc Frappier, who I will introduce later on, for them to take the floor to introduce the work on the ground that I was referring to just now. Now, Michel has reminded you that 2018 was a year of major transformation for the Eurazeo Group, and this transformation has been underway for some years now, as you know. We have paved the way for an international group, a multi-business group with a wealth of talent. We were particularly active in 2019 in terms of investment. This was a record year, in fact, since approximately 6 billion euros were either invested or disinvested by your group. And as Michel said, 90 companies have now joined Eurazeo in 2018. Looking beyond investment and disinvestment, we have conducted many strategic investments for the group, which will bear fruit over time, and we are therefore building the future of the Eurazeo Group. As you can see, there is a step up in the diversification strategy. 3 new businesses with the arrival of Idinvest, strategic partnerships with Rhône. The announcement that you saw of the arrival of the Chinese sovereign fund, CIC China Investment Corporation, which has chosen Eurazeo to be its strategic partner to accompany French and European companies to better help them in their development and growth in China. This is a proper marker reflecting the success of our vision with the involvement in China over the past few years. International growth, we are convinced, and Marc will talk about this during the year. He will tell us why do we engage in international growth? What does it contribute to our company? This acceleration in 2018 has given rise to a group which I think is a very unusual group, which has all the strengths and qualities required to succeed in the years ahead. Now, why is it so unusual? Because it combines capital as well as third-party management. It accompanies medium-sized companies. It has the unique feature of having global exposure. Very few private equity players in the mid-cap or upper mid-cap segment have the capacity to offer companies in their portfolio this global reach. This is a company that has grown in terms of talent. There are 235 of us today working on international development and transformation. We are present in many countries and continents. And this is what makes Eurazeo so unique and unusual in its sector in terms of business model and the approach to business. So what I would like to say is that this requirement for transformation that we have applied to the Eurazeo Group, we have decided to apply it to ourselves in the transformation that we are seeing through. The first strategic thrust in this transformation is the diversification of the business lines. We have a deep conviction on transformation. We've implemented this over the past 10 years. 10 years ago, the group only had one investment team. Now, as you can see, we have 8 teams, 8 investment branches working on transformation. And my message to you, the shareholders, that these business lines enable the company to deploy more capital in more companies. And what this means, therefore, is more opportunities, less risk for the Eurazeo Group, because we are deploying more broadly. And as you've seen, 374 companies in the Eurazeo Group today. Those of you who have been following us for a long time, you know how much the group has changed. We have 4 asset classes, 4 main asset classes: private equity, property, funds of funds, and private debt. And the second strategic development thrust, which is key for the Eurazeo Group, is diversification, and in particular the build-up of our resources. Michel has recalled that we had a record 2018, 2.3 billion euros that were entrusted to us by our investment partners who entrusted these funds because they share the strategic vision of our group. They like the way we support companies. They feel that we have a quality deal flow, that we're going to do a good job with them in order to develop these companies. So looking beyond the figures, which clearly are record figures, it's our ability to grow using these resources to build up our resources and to bring more stability, more income to the group and its shareholders. And what is also the strength of our group is that since we have 8 business lines, we are constantly in touch with our investors. We don't simply go and see them once every 3 or 4 years to tell them about the strategy or a particular strategy. We're in constant dialogue with them. They trust us. And under the aegis of the Eurazeo Group, they know that each of the investment teams is working with the same conviction and commitment in transforming and creating value for them and for Eurazeo shareholders. And of course, in order to support this growth, we have significantly built up the Eurazeo Group. As you can see, there are 90 companies here. Now, you know some of them. There are others that you don't know, but believe me, they all have very significant growth potential, value potential. You'll see this over time, and you will see that this group of 374 companies, we know all these companies very well. We love them. We accompany them. And here are some, I'll show you a short film to illustrate this.
Voilà, beaucoup de belles.
So many beautiful stories, and to support these beautiful company stories, we've grown, as you've seen, and especially we added to the talented people at Eurazeo. We've added to our teams of talented people. Internationally, we've shown more diversity, expertise, ability to support people in the US, in China, in Europe, support all of our companies. That's been our intention in recent years, to keep our Eurazeo roots. We're French origin. We certainly have global reach and intentions, and we're adding to this global skills. Let's take a look at what we've achieved. You who've known us for so long, 10 years ago, would you have imagined a company like Eurazeo would have been able to attract such highly talented international people, so many experts to underpin the transformation of our companies, our private equity industry, highly influential people as well who assist us in developing our networks and developing our partnerships. For me, this is a true sense of pride. As you all know very well in all your business areas, the most difficult thing in our business areas is to attract the most talented people, to really get them to want to come on board. Many of us are operating in this industry. There are lots of opportunities out there. We need to convince talented people to come on board here, align our positions. And why do they come to Eurazeo Group? For many different reasons. Let me just mention three of them. Firstly, they come because we are an ambitious group, mobile, fleet-footed, agile. At the same time, we're very close to our companies, work as partners with them. We're out there in the field supporting them. We're an international group, but small, human scale nonetheless. So a clear entrepreneurial idea. We can support our companies and let people use their talents here. Furthermore, we've got a true type of ethics in business, a way of behaving with our companies, with the companies in our portfolio, with our employees as well. We're highly disciplined, we're highly committed, and we're highly ethical. This very much attracts wonderfully talented people. Talented people. I am so fortunate as chairman of Eurazeo Group. I've got a tremendous team at my side. They assist me to lead this group and bring it forward and to move on our strategic developments, creating value for shareholders of Eurazeo. This team has grown. The team is highly professional, highly committed for 12 years on average. Calculating averages. On average, we've been working together for about 12 years. That's equally important. To be able to gauge investments, you have to work as a team. Not one single person makes the right decision at the right time. It's my pleasure to be adding to our teams. That's very important. I'd coming on board. We've done a great deal of work to integrate I'd Invest in 2018. You'll remember we announced I'd Invest at the AGM last year. It's been 12 months now. The integration is very much underway. It's understandable, and I'm very pleased to say to you this morning the entry to the Executive Committee of Eurazeo Group, the two founders, and Chairman Christophe Bavière and Benoit Grossman. Welcome to you both to the Executive Committee of Eurazeo. I'm very fortunate that you're joining us.
On ne les présente.
We don't need to introduce them. We can say they bring 30 years experience to us, 30 years as investors. Christophe and Benoit are heads of businesses. They're entrepreneurs. This is also why they've chosen us. They saw that at Eurazeo, they found a reflection of their values. They were bringing in their strategic view and their enthusiasm for this business of ours. I'm so pleased to welcome you on board. Thank you so much. Now, I'm not going to make it easy to do statistics about Eurazeo. Christophe and Benoit have come on board now at the Executive Committee. We have to add more women to the Executive Committee. We've got a lot of talented women in this group, and it's just going to be transitional until we get even more women on board. I'm going to hand over to Philippe Audouin, CFO of Eurazeo Group, who will be outlining for you the 2018 results. This is the 18th AGM for Mr. Philippe Audouin, though you can't tell by looking at him.
Merci, Virginie.
Thank you, Virginie. Ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders, good morning. That's true. This is the 18th year that I've been standing before this shareholders meeting. First, on request from Mr. Bruno Roger here in the front row. I'm not the senior-most person here. I recognize faces in the room. People have started 18 years ago. I suspect they're shareholders here who've been on board here longer than I have. Thank you very much for your loyalty. 2018 was a highly active year for Eurazeo. Chairman Michel David talked about this. Virginie Morgan spoke about this as well. For instance, we took a majority stake in Idinvest and a 30% investment in Rhone Capital. These are two companies which are consolidated in our financial statements and have been since 1 July 2018. 2018 was also a year that saw differing situations in terms of the economy. Outlook for growth regularly was revised downward throughout 2018 and beginning of 19. The IMF 6 times revised things downward, I believe. Outlook for growth in France, only 1.5% GDP growth in 2019 is expected. Furthermore, during the year, we saw, this was 2018, we saw the arrival of greater risk aversion among investors. We saw the effect of this. We saw a flight to quality, i.e. seeking investments in large, highly liquid companies. Furthermore, this impacted markets. The CAC 40 had gone up by 2.8% in the first half last year, went down by 11% in the second half of last year. Nevertheless, pertaining to Eurazeo, it's my pleasure to tell you that we're reporting great results this year yet again. On the screen now, you've got 2 important indicators for a company's activity. First of all, its revenues are economic revenues. Economic revenues, as you know in our phraseology, this is both our consolidated revenues plus the proportionate portion of revenue of companies that we've consolidated as equity affiliates. That economic revenue went up by 11% during 2018. EBITDA went up by 10.3% during the same period. Now let's look at the detail of the income statement. Preliminary comments here. First of all, on the right-hand side of the screen, you've got the reported figures 2017 and 18. At the center, that I'm going to comment on, you've got the pro forma figures, the integration of Rhone and Idinvest for the full year pro forma. And these are the figures that are the best reflection of our economic scope at Eurazeo currently. Our activities, we said initially, has developed quite a bit in 2018. Major developments in 2018. Therefore, we changed the way we display our income statement to better reflect what Eurazeo has become today. Now we have three main sections in the income statement. The first section is the contribution of all group companies. This is the consolidated financial statements I'm talking about. Contribution of all group companies to our Eurazeo financial statements. These companies contributed to the tune of 250.6 million euros, 250.6, to our earnings at Eurazeo in 2018. The second section here is the income statement for Eurazeo as an investment company. Here, we include, among other things, capital gains minus impairments if there are any. I'll come back to the point later. We also include here dividends. Furthermore, we include, if so, re-invoiced services minus the related costs. 251.9 million euro, 261.9 million euros. 261.9 million. This means a very high amount of capital gains also in 2018, almost equal to those in 2017, where capital gains were already very high. We booked 548 million in income here, and in compliance with accounting standards. We also adjusted the value of Europcar more to its share value, whereas it was 11 euros in our books, but we brought it down to 8 euros in our books, which meant we booked an impairment of 144 million euros. Third section here is the contribution of Eurazeo as an asset manager. It's a new line of business which we developed and stepped up its development. Virginie alluded to this, and we'll come back to the point as well. Here as asset manager, we've got income, which is management fees, We've got the extra performance fees minus costs. This added to our earnings to the tune of 69.7 million euros in 2018. Another additional point at the bottom of the income statement, you've got amortizations and costs relating to this 178 million euros, plus non-recurring items and taxes, two line items that are substantial this year. Firstly, early amortization of a brand in the group, 50 million euros, and then an impairment of assets sold in Asia by Sequence, 47 million euros. All in all, net income group share, 260.5 million euros. 260.5 million euros. Now let's move on to the balance sheet. Two main items. First of all, pertaining to the financial structure here, Eurazeo, as you know, has as an objective, and this is an important part of our strategy, to maintain a sound financial structure. I'll come back to the point. Now, understand today Eurazeo has approximately 820 million euros cash on hand, no structural debt in our balance sheet. Now, of course, there can be some debt contained in the companies that we invest in. That debt is booked under consolidated financial statements, but it's non-recourse debt against Eurazeo. Another important item, Eurazeo, this year goes beyond the mark of 5 billion in shareholders' equity. That helps us stand out. It distinguishes us. It shows a real source of strength for the future. Briefly, to allude to our net asset value, 77.5 euros, up 5.7% compared to the 31st of December of the previous year, including the dividend which was paid during 2018. This represents 5.9 billion euros in assets in Eurazeo's balance sheet. Where does this growth come from? It comes from each and every one of our investment divisions. Eurazeo PME saw growth in its net assets on the order of 16% during 2018. Eurazeo Croissance up 36% with great equity investments in PeopleDoc, for instance, and Farfetch, which was successful in its IPO, plus others that Virginie already mentioned. Eurazeo Patrimoine showing growth in assets of 21%. Eurazeo Development up 38%. Eurazeo Brands this year hasn't yet shown value creation, not because there wasn't any, but these are recent assets, and as you know, in compliance with our methodology in valuing our assets, all assets held under 1 year are kept at their cost of original investment. Eurazeo Capital representing a big proportion of our NAV, sees growth of 3%. There are crossing effects here. Non-listed assets in Eurazeo Capital went up by 11%, whereas listed assets as a group lost 10%. At the same time, each of those listed companies reported operating figures that were very good. This reminds me to some degree what happened in 2016. Think back to 2016. Our listed assets reported great results, but their share prices had gone down. In 2017, the market to some degree corrected that anomaly, and those assets grew, outpaced average growth. I don't know what 2019 will hold, if it will equal 2017. I hope so. We don't yet see this at least in Europe Car. We did see it at Montclair. You saw on 19 March, we sold the remainder of our stake in Montclair with valuation of 28% above Montclair's valuation on 31 December 2018. In our NAV and the figures I'm submitting to you today, you've got approximately 1 billion euros, which is 19% of our assets, which were not revaluated for the reasons I gave earlier, i.e. they're recent in our portfolio. Almost half of our NAV contains assets under 2 years. So either they weren't reevaluated at all, or only slightly so because they're still in an early stage. They're fairly young in our portfolio, which goes to show that there's substantial potential for growth in the NAV in the future. Virginie was saying this to you earlier. Eurazeo has very much seen a great deal of transformation. These figures here are a good demonstration of our change and transformation. In 2011, why are we choosing 2011? That was just before the takeover and creation of Eurazeo PME within our scope. Eurazeo at that time had 4 billion assets it was managing. Out of the 4 billion in assets, you had 3.2 billion on Eurazeo's balance sheet. This was our NAV at the time. Plus, you had 400 million euros managed for third-party partner investors. Currently, at the end of 2018, the 4 billion became 17 billion. And the interesting thing is the 3.2 billion NAV became 6 billion, mainly thanks to value creation in the companies in our portfolio over the 7-year period. The average cash on cash, as it's termed, i.e. between the amount invested and amount divested, since 2002 for that matter, since we've been investing in private equity, is around 2 times. In spite of the crises in 2008, 2011, and different situations. And then the amount managed for third-party partners grew by from 400 million to 11 billion euros, inter alia due to the 2 deals we just talked about a few moments ago. Our objective, you're familiar with it, our objective is to provide you with attractive performance in the long term. All the while controlling risk. Risk control, how do we achieve this? First of all, by good diversification in our assets. This is essential. Now we have no fewer than 48 companies in the Eurazeo portfolio itself and 374 companies, including companies where Idinvest has invested either through debt or equity. These are companies which are at varying levels of development in different sectors and geographies. We also obtain this through the absence of structural debt. We don't say it enough. Not having structural debt, of course we realize this helps reduce risk, this helps reduce volatility. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see changes in Eurazeo volatility going down by 35 to 18%. This is a very good thing. And not having structural debt also gives us a lot more than this, enables us to do many more things than this. It means we have full control of the timing of our exits. We never are in a situation where we must divest an asset just to pay back some debt in markets that are volatile. If debt maturity were to happen at a trough in the cycle, you might wonder about the real value of our assets. Not the case at Eurazeo. We are in full control of timing our exits. Next, by having a sound financial structure, this also means we can support all the companies in our portfolio when they've got a great project, when they've got a project that Eurazeo believes in. We don't have to select from between one company versus another because we can't support both. Now, of course, this means there's real momentum, which is very good momentum.
Risk control also involves exemplary governance. This is very important to us. I'm convinced that a company can do a good deal at some point in its history, but to have recurring performance, consistent performance, that only is possible with good governance. And we have strong internal control of risk, and this is a team, the risk control team, which works not only for Eurazeo but throughout the companies in the group under the control of the audit committee of the group. Now let's talk about performance, in particular the share price and dividends. Over a relatively short time span, you see the evolution of the share price. I can identify 4 particular periods in this. The first period, from early 2013 to early 2017, Eurazeo generated a 100% return over this 4-year period, whereas the CAC 40 index was up 49%. This excellent performance stepped up significantly in 2017, where in 2017 alone, Eurazeo generated shareholder returns of 47% versus a CAC 40 index at plus 12%. Of course, this increase gave rise to a consolidation phase, which coincided with the turnaround in the markets. And in 2018, the share price was down 15%, whereas the CAC 40 was down 8%, and Eurazeo's shares are up 11% versus an index up 19%. So the share price is on the same level, including 2018 dividends. Now, looking at dividends, you can see displayed on the screen dividend payments since 2002, in other words, over the past 17 years. And over the past 17 years, the Eurazeo dividend has increased by 6.7% on average every year. It has never gone down, and it has never been suspended, even during the crisis. Regarding the dividend, we will be recommending a dividend payment of 1.25 euros per share, together with the distribution of 1 bonus share for you, the shareholders. Over long periods, what has been the shareholder return for shareholders in Eurazeo? The market cap of Eurazeo in June 2002 was 1.925 billion euros. Since then, we have given back to investors 2.637 billion euros through dividends, share buybacks, and excluding this year's dividend. This is more than the initial market capitalization, which is up to 4.739 billion euros at end December, 11% up, reflecting total shareholder return of 313% over the period versus the CAC 40 of 118%. I'll say a few words now about investor relations between Eurazeo and the individual private shareholders. And we all ourselves invest in Eurazeo. This is not an artificial relationship. Eurazeo is in a rather unusual situation amongst the major quoted companies because over half of its capital is held by individual shareholders. This includes our major shareholders who are represented on the supervisory board, Mr. Michel David Veil and his family, the Decaux family, the Richardson family, 3 entrepreneurial families who are all with us this morning, who have excellent knowledge of the private sector and who are very loyal to us, and 11% of private shareholders, which is a high percentage among private companies quoted on the CAC 40 and the SBF 120, and some of them have been with us for a long time. I recognize some familiar faces looking around the room, and I'd like to thank them once again. Now, we conducted a survey last year to better understand your expectations regarding investment to shareholders. Now, the three priorities that you emphasized at the time were, number one, strategy, strategic performance, and the strategic outlook. Of course, figures, performance, and number three, strategy and the activity of our business lines. Now, in response to this, Eurazeo committed to wealth management, in other words, creating wealth while controlling risk. Information goals to provide you with reliable, accurate information, fully consistent with your needs, and relationship requirements, in other words, to provide you with the opportunity to meet, to engage with management and the companies. We've announced this, we did this in order to provide you with more information. We have added items to our website. We are providing you with short video films, clips for each event. Even in a short film of 1.5 to 2 minutes, you can say far more than you can in a mere press release. Digitalization of the shareholder letter, and we provided with the opportunity to follow the shareholder meeting via webcast, all our major financial meetings. And in order to encourage interaction, last year I launched the first web conference for presenting our results, because I wanted you, the private shareholders, to have as much information, the fullest amount of information possible, as much as the institutional investors. And these web conferences are also an opportunity for you to ask questions to which I can answer directly through the internet, and of course shareholder meetings, which we hold in Paris, in the regions, and now in a few cities outside France. So now I'd like to show a very short film that illustrates the work that we have completed for you.
Voilà, si jamais vous ne recevez
So, if you don't get all this information, then feel free to contact us and to register on our website, and we'd be very happy for you to receive all this information. And here's a small scoop for this morning, because we have put online this morning the first digital annual report for Eurazeo. So please go and have a look at it through the website. And in concluding, you can see on the screen our next meetings to be held. On the 19th of June, I'll be in Annecy for a meeting with individual shareholders. On the 11th of June, I'll be in Stockholm. And the 26th of July will be our next interactive web conference to present our half-yearly results. Thank you very much indeed.
Et je vais demander à Olivier Millet.
So I'll hand over to Olivier Milly and Sophie Flack. They are all CSR experts. This is our trademark, and I will hand over to Olivier and Sophie. Thank you very much, Virginie. Impact. As Churchill said, the success brings about responsibility, and this year we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of our CSR commitment at Eurazeo in terms of environmental responsibility, societal engagement, and corporate governance. As you can see, throughout this period, we have innovated significantly. We have chosen to move away from the beaten track in terms of investment, and we have learned a great deal. We have learned in order to adapt the investor business to all the stakes arising from corporal and societal responsibility. And 10 years down the road, 10 years later, we're very proud to be able to share with you the recognition arising from the major indices around the year. We're the only global group to be represented in 5 global responsibility indices. One of them, Vigeo Eiris, which is one of the most highly regarded agencies, selected us to be part of the top 20 companies who've made the most progress in terms of CSR, and amongst the 5 top groups globally in financial terms. Our growth ambitions require that we take into account all the CSR parameters in the sustainable development of the companies that we a company of which we're shareholders in France, of course, in Europe, and all over the world. At the end of 2018, we changed our we measured our social footprint in terms of the number of jobs that we accompany. 374 companies representing 310,000 employees, and according to our calculations, this shows that each direct job creates 7 indirect jobs. So work it out for yourself. It's quite easy. The capital of Eurazeo's group have a direct impact on employment around the world. So we're aware of our responsibility. We know it's important in social and societal terms, and we have been working since 2018 with this conviction that it's possible to combine performance with ethics, responsibility, and sustainability. And we're delighted today. I'm going to hand over to Sophie. We are very happy to share the results and the methods with you to show how we create value for your company. Well, let's dwell briefly on the major phases in our investment business, which are detection, holding, and creating value. CSR is part of each of these phases. In the detection phase, Eurazeo puts out analysis on the environmental, social, societal aspects of the governance of these investment projects. Our goal is to ensure that the company is not exposed to any major RSE risk that could call into question its growth. Let's take a specific example. Worldline. We worked on this investment in 2017. This company is the leading player in education travel in the United States, Worldstride. When a school or a college want to take their students or pupils on a trip, the company that comes to mind is Worldstride, which enables over 400,000 young people to have an educational trip every year. We paid particular attention to an increasingly important issue in terms of CSR, which is that of consumer safety and the safety for Worldstride of its pupils who travel. So therefore, we conducted in-depth analysis of all security-related aspects, safety-related aspects, risk of harassment, physical safety, capacity to intervene in an emergency, because which parent would entrust his or her children to a body in which he does not have full trust? So we have gone through with a fine-tooth comb all the procedures, the indicators established by the management in order to ensure the safety of the pupils. But above all, we wanted to go further than that, and we went back over a 10 years history of messages on social media. The interesting thing about social media is that all experiences, be they good or bad, leave a trace. And in our due diligence, we use this source of information in order to have access to what is a real goldmine. And this analysis, combined with the analysis of all the digital traces on the web, enabled us to build a deep conviction that the company is fully mobilized in order to ensure the safety of its pupils, and that is doing everything it can to maintain the reputation for excellence. Now, going beyond the specific example given by Sophie, the major question is, are there investments that we have rejected for RSE-related reasons? There are several parameters that may lead us to reject an investment project, but to be specific, 3 were rejected for very specific reasons arising from the societal acceptability. After analysis, we became convinced that the consumers of these companies were probably going to drastically change their spending behavior, calling into question the business model of the company. This has been the case for companies where the logistical chain has been completely outsourced and where working conditions with some suppliers are well below the standards set by the International Labour Organization. For example, last summer, we studied a company, an investment project rather, regarding a jewelry company. And we came to the conclusion that the company would not have the required drivers in order to ensure transformation of the working conditions with its suppliers. So we preferred to pass, and we did not invest. For you, our shareholders, our approach steers our investments toward responsible companies. After the detection phase, we moved to the holding phase. And with each company, we deploy a CSR program specifically suited to the challenges and with 2 goals in mind: reducing risk on the one hand and strengthening or reinforcing the value on the other. We are particularly attentive to the working conditions of the employees of companies in which we are shareholders. In order to measure well-being at work, we ask the management team to establish a satisfaction barometer, and we ask them to share the result of the barometer of the survey in a transparent manner with the supervisory board. Quite often, when we ask companies to set up this type of barometer, they're doing this for the very first time. Nevertheless, year after year, we see that the CEOs and the human resources directors unanimously commend the approach once it has been set up. Another innovative approach, for example, is that of impact that we have deployed with Peters Surgical, which manufactures surgical products. We worked with management to reduce absenteeism, energy consumption, consumption of water and fuel. 4 years down the road, the results are very significant. We have reduced energy consumption by 10%. We have reduced fuel consumption by 50%. We have avoided over 25,000 hours of absenteeism, and this accounts for over 2 million euros of spending that we've been able to avoid. 16 companies in the portfolio are taking part in the Avoided Impacts program, and as you can see on the slide behind me, the results are very significant. We have over 230 million euros of avoided impacts or avoided expenditure through our program.
Sophie talked to you about methodology. Now, let's talk about valuations and capital gains. Let's recall that we see our business line as being a long-term investor with the 5 to 10-year hold horizon. Above and beyond our shareholdership, we need to make sure that the companies we invest in have a real project. So the simple question was ask ourselves is as follows, the various questions. If we're talking about a 5 to 10-year timeline, the company, if it's more responsible, will it have more value? I.e., will the capital gain be greater for Eurazeo? We're convinced that the more CSR subjects are dealt with in the future, the greater impact that's going to have on a company's value. And we can say that it's both in the interest of ethics and economics. We can work with all of these businesses on plans to make further CSR progress. It's mutually beneficial. CSR increases resilience. CSR makes it possible to assist the entire company, revamp the whole company, its management, and so forth, as well as its products. CSR for us is a sort of leitmotif, is a guiding thread, providing consistency, economic and societal consistency, ranging from the shareholders, such as yourselves, all the way to the consumers, covering all the layers, all the levels in the value chain. The reason for existence of a company today may be summed up through the following question. Will I continue to fit into the economy in the next 5 to 10 years? This is a challenging question for many companies. This is the main question we need to ask ourselves before we invest in companies and before we commit to the long time frames with companies. So we're talking about more value, greater valuation on exit? Yes, absolutely. And Virginie will come back to the tremendous capital gains achieved last year. All the divestments we made have shown that this amount of capital gain is directly related to the commitment and responsibility of the company and its managers. If growth in revenue and profitability, growth in business, growth in profitability continue to be and will always be the main parameters to value a company, equally important will be the confidence that company can create through its business model and its managers. And that's going to be ever more influential on the valuation of these companies, therefore on our capital gains. In some cases, we're going so far as to say this has an impact on the ability to sell the company. If it's not done the transformative programs, possibly they'd have a lower value and maybe no exit value, and it would be more difficult to sell the company. Eurazeo steps up company's transformation. Eurazeo also steps up positive impact for the entire civil society. In 2018, our firm belief was we could tie in CSR and economic growth, link them to financial performance. 10 years down the road, currently, we've clearly proven this. And we state it yet again today that you can no longer have any value creation without truly shouldering your responsibility. For you as shareholders, this investment model is surely a unique one and is a source of performance for you. Equally, we hope this will be a source of pride for you all.
Vous voyez, vous avez...
See, you can see for yourselves. A belief we had 10 years ago, careful work has been done, and now we see the results, truly impressive results today. This is our identity. This makes, and our brand, our supervisory board, and we have a dedicated team to track CSR for the Eurazeo Group and the companies in our portfolio. And you can see to what extent our commitments and our belief are taken very seriously throughout the group because we track this very carefully at the board level. I'd like to hand over to Marc Frappier now. He's been with Eurazeo for over 15 years. Marc is in charge of Eurazeo Capital. He'll be talking to you about international. We're going from CSR, a major source of transformation, to international points. To show you how much progress has been made, very impressive progress, and especially the results that we see and the benefits for the company. Thank you, Virginie. In the next few minutes, I'd like to really talk to you about Eurazeo as an investor and what our business line is. What we do is use various leverages for growth, increase market share, support strategic projects. These are essential times, turning points in various businesses. To that end, we provide these businesses and the managers with capital, but not only capital. Most importantly, bring to the loop expertise, international expertise is one of the types of expertise that can help us really stand out at Eurazeo. I'm very much convinced that more times than not, this is one of the most attractive elements to entrepreneurs and managers. Why is it important to be international vision? And Philippe alluded to this briefly. Firstly, because there are companies ranging from startups to multinationals have ambitions, have things looking toward outside their domestic markets. This is essential for the development. Secondly, it's because this makes us even better private equity investors. First of all, our deal network extends, providing us with greater opportunities and higher quality opportunities. Furthermore, we see our brand influence. Our brand influence is increased, strengthened, attracting new talents, international talents. Virginie alluded to this earlier. We wouldn't have been able to attract these talented people just a few years ago. Lastly, Philippe mentioned this earlier. This international diversification makes it possible to diversify our risks and increase growth drivers, have more growth drivers, and see greater opportunities for our investments and for you as shareholders. Now, how have we supported this international development, international footprint developed based on a couple of major focuses? Firstly, direct investment. Secondly, providing support to companies in our portfolio. To talk about the United States, for instance, we had a firm belief that's the biggest market for alternative investments worldwide, and we had a firm belief that we had a unique offer we could provide. In the transatlantic sphere, we opened an office in 2016, transferred part of our teams, and set up a new team as well. Currently, Eurazeo Capital and Eurazeo Brands investing directly in the United States. I'll come back to the point later. Now, regarding China and Latin America, these are emerging areas with a great deal of potential, but they're much more complex, much more difficult for international investors to access. Therefore, we preferred to focus our initial efforts on developing local expertise to support our companies in those geographies. That's why we have offices in Shanghai and in Sao Paulo. Lastly, in recent years, we developed strategic partnerships. Again, the transatlantic focus, a partnership with Rhone in Europe, with the acquisition of Idinvest and MCH, we'll come back to this, and also in China with the strategic partnership with CIC. The international market, this means more opportunities, as I mentioned. Furthermore, let's look at some of the figures. The deal flow at Eurazeo in the last 4 years grew by 30% per annum. More numbers, more geographies, and also greater business diversity. This diversified deal flow, you can see this here. At the unique strategy, Eurazeo Brands, it's also evidenced, and also it invests private debt. You see the geographical diversification here as well. Last, having more opportunities, having a greater choice means we can be more selective. We can focus, we can be carefully disciplined to opt for the best investments, move on the best opportunities for Eurazeo. With time, there's a time for selection and then a time for transformation. That's our core business. Transformation, international transformation, as I've said. All companies, regardless of their size, need to access international markets, either organically or through acquisition. You know, this is leverage we often use thanks to our capital and, most importantly, thanks to our international network. I very much like this illustration here. This shows the deals and the location of the external growth deals we did with Olivier's teams in Eurazeo Capital. Since 2011, we've had 130 external growth deals. That's about 2 per month. More diversity, more growth levers, which means greater performance and greater ability to attract to us partner investors, ever more partner investors who place their trust in us. Over 3 years, we saw a 5-fold increase in number of investment partners at our side. These partner investors are mainly non-French today, representing over 12 different nationalities. So today, we're able to provide access to new markets, to networks of expertise and so forth in 3 continents and 9 countries. The first of them, Europe. Europe, 210 professionals currently, 353 investments or financings. This, of course, is the core of our business. This is where we get the bulk of our teams and our companies, as well as our partner investors. This is also where the Eurazeo brand is the strongest and where the potential for investment is the greatest. We're shareholders, as you can see, or we finance companies throughout Europe, ranging from Scandinavia down to Spain. It's a very broad portfolio. We're adding to it every day. Our market coverage, which means number of companies that we meet with versus the total market, is about 100% in France. A dedicated origination team carefully targets coverage percentage equivalent in other continental European countries. Lastly, our European network has been strengthened in London, Frankfurt, and Madrid, thanks to partnerships with Rhone and Idinvest and MCH. I'm sure that you'll see us continue boosting our presence in Europe. One of the first stages that Virginie mentioned this is our stake, 25% stake. We took an MCH private equity. This is a company, Spanish investment company with 1 billion assets under management, making 34 investments since its inception, with 20 professionals on board, which is one of the top performers in Southern Europe. They're an ideal partner for Eurazeo. Together, they can become one of the main or one of the European leaders in SME financing. A second major area for Eurazeo is North America. North America currently, in just a 2-year period, now has 17 professionals, 2 investment teams, Eurazeo Capital and Eurazeo Brands. Over a 2-year period, we established the Eurazeo brand in the United States, developed a strategic partnership with Rhone, and most importantly, invested 580 million euros in 6 companies. The initial results are ready to be seen. You can see the top 3 investments, Trader, WorldStrides, and Nest. Growth in those companies is always double-digit. This is the type of asset we're looking for. We continue actively working to develop our deal flow in the U.S. You can see in just 1 year's time, our activity grew by 50%. A second strategic area for us, South America, 2 professionals there, strong growth in the area, great potential, highly complex though. To develop our local footprint, we're using a recognized professional, Marcos Grasso, who for several decades has been in senior management in agri-food in Brazil and in Latin America more broadly. Thanks to his knowledge of the marketplace, his personal deals network, he enabled us to establish the Eurazeo brand in South America and specifically in Brazil, supporting 12 of our biggest companies there from Eurazeo to enter or develop partnerships in Brazil. An iconic example of this support in Brazil is Ellis. Ellis wasn't present in Brazil 5 years ago. Currently, Ellis is #1 in linen rental and maintenance in Brazil, thanks to 2 major acquisitions we financing the #2 and the #1 in that product area in Brazil, plus several consolidations locally in Brazil and in Latin America, making Ellis a major leader. Fourth strategic area, Asia. Asia was Eurazeo's first international experience with the opening of our office in Shanghai in 2013. Virginie and I feel this is a very important area. We're the first French investment company, to establish a location in China. The office, of course, is very much in line with our company's needs to develop themselves in the region. Eurazeo, led by Eddie Chen since its inception, boosted through the acquisition of Idinvest. We merged our 2 teams in China. We began this with Jean-Pierre Raffarin, the inauguration last fall. There are 8 professionals there now, highly talented people with international experience, one and all. The threefold mission statement for the Chinese office: to develop our deal flow there and partnerships in the region, to support and assist. Second was to support and assist our companies in the Chinese market, for them to achieve organic development and growth through acquisition and partnerships. Lastly, more recently, to analyze investment opportunities. Idinvest does this directly through Idinvest Ventures. They did 2 deals in China, and we consider investments indirectly or as partnerships with our other investment strategies. Results went beyond our initial expectations. There was a great deal of work. An example, some illustrations here on the screen. The most recent ones, Sophie mentioned World Strides. World Strides is a U.S. operation. We brought in a Chinese partner. We believe in potential for developing that business in China. Primavera Capital jointly investing at our side. Together, we did a first acquisition in Shanghai, a small business called Talent Academy. Next, an illustration called Planet, which established strategic partnerships with top-ranking players in China. You're familiar with, I'm sure, like Alibaba and Tencent, WeChat, and Ctrip, the biggest online operator for organizing travel. Lastly, I'm very proud that this expertise has been recognized, and beautifully so, just under a month ago. One of the biggest sovereign funds in the world, the Chinese Sovereign Fund, China Investment Corporation, CIC, decided with the BNP to select Eurazeo to manage a fund of over 1 billion, which will be investing in French or European companies that are strongly developing in China. This decision is true recognition of our quality, international recognition of the quality of our Eurazeo teams. Furthermore, it's true recognition of the important commitment we've made to China over the last 7-year period. This is the first time in France and continental Europe. A unique and first partnership sign of how important it is. It was signed, as you can see, before our two presidents, Xi Jinping and Emmanuel Macron at the Élysée. This will substantially boost our ability to support companies in China and our brand. We've seen this a couple of weeks ago with Virginie during our recent trip to China. People were highly receptive and knowledgeable of Eurazeo, more so than in the past. So there you have it, something that really makes us distinctive at Eurazeo. This is our core business as investors. Thank you for your attention.
Formidable. Merci beaucoup, Marc.
Well done, Mark. Thank you very much. So, a company that has grown through its talent, its international presence, and I've been telling you this morning how confident I am, how optimistic I am about the prospects for Eurazeo in the years ahead. We're confident because we're in a very dynamic market. We're confident because the Eurazeo Group, your company, has all the strengths required to succeed, and also our faith in our future performance. Now, first of all, the market. We are working in a market which is very dynamic, which is becoming increasingly professional, which is deep, which is growing strongly in a sector which is very dynamic. I'm going to illustrate this with some figures, both for France and internationally. In 2018, 19 billion euros were entrusted to us by French and foreign investors for investment in the transformation of French companies. This is a historic record, and these investors are very diverse. They include insurance companies, pension funds, institutional investors, family offices, private investors who entrust their funds to us in order to develop this extremely robust market. One of the reasons why there are more of them is that it steps up the potential, because I'll give you 3 reasons. Private equity, over the past 5 years, over the past 10, 15 years, in fact, is generating more performance, but delivers better yields than many asset classes. The second reason is that these investors, these sovereign funds, still have a very small share, only 10 to 20%, depending on the geographical region, who are already allocated to our private equity business, which is the asset management, alternative asset management. So there's very significant potential there as well. And our 3 businesses, innovation capital, development capital, transmission capital, these businesses are being driven increasingly, well, admittedly by the competitors, so that means we have to be at the cutting edge. But these businesses have become far more professional in recent years, and that's why the market is growing. And more importantly, the management teams, the entrepreneurs, many of whom are in the room today from the Eurazeo Group, they're the ones who have decided to join a private equity group such as Eurazeo to accompany them in their growth. And the reason why they're choosing us is that it's an industry which has very strong added value. You've understood this. We've given you examples. It's not just the financial resources that we contribute to our companies. We bring also a strategic vision, a global ambition, operational resources as well. And looking at some very telling figures here over the past 10 years, the number of companies that have decided to join up with a private equity player has grown by 60% over that period. In terms of growth or step up in growth, we contribute genuine added value. And the private equity companies have grown 3 times as fast as the underlying GDP. So that's another illustration of the quality of the added value. So there is a pendulum swing, as it were. It is you see it in the press. Private equity is growing very significantly, and in parallel, there are fewer listed companies over the past 10 years, minus 15% fewer quoted companies in Europe. No, sorry, that's in America, and 30% in Europe. So it's stepped up in Europe. So I think the problems here are related to risk, complexity, volatility, and of course, fewer, less added value brought about by partners. And that makes me very optimistic because our market is being built, and we, the investors in private equity, we are a full-fledged industry. And you'd be very surprised to see the figures in terms of financial investors as the share they have in GDP in France, in the United States. Of the 10 largest US employers, 6 of the 10 are held by a financial investor, private equity investor. So those are the American figures. That's what I call the fourth way for capitalism. And believe me, we're only at the beginning of this exponential growth in our businesses. What was the highlight of 2018? Well, of course, it was Idinvest. The acquisition of Idinvest is not only an acquisition, but it's an acquisition that transforms the Eurazeo Group. And we were very happy to meet the talented teams of Idinvest. And it will come as no surprise for you to hear me say that we've decided to work together, that we are bringing about the synergies between both our groups. It's been a very good group for Idinvest and a very good group for Eurazeo. And we have brought about the mergers that we wanted to do. We went out and met our investors in China, the Middle East, Europe. We wanted to bring together the teams overseas. We've done this in China, and we'll be doing this soon in Madrid and Frankfurt. And of course, we have merged the operational and corporate know-how of both groups. So that part of our job has been done, but we've done this with a very deep conviction, which is that Eurazeo must contribute what it has already contributed in the past to other companies and talented groups. Of course, its brand, its vision, its financial resources. We have invested, Eurazeo has invested 430 million euros, which have been committed in order to accelerate the growth of Idinvest, to speed up that merger between Idinvest and Eurazeo, which brings together our teams and our respective talents. Now, if there's one key message I'd like you to remember from this acquisition, apart from all the excitement and all the projects that we are running together, it's the capacity that the Eurazeo Group has to put flesh on its strategic goal. And this is it. giving birth to a leading European player which can accompany, both in funding terms and investment terms, companies at all stages of their development, running from the startup to the multinational company in France, in Europe, and around the world. And the combination of Idinvest Group and know-how and the know-how of Eurazeo, this is what will enable us to attain that goal. This is a proper corporate project. We want to be the #1 European player in accompanying companies. So the first stage is to give birth to the leading player in growth capital. We've called it Eurazeo Growth. It brings together our teams which have so successfully run their business, for example, in French fintech. And as you can see, we have invested. There's 7 unicorns have been registered in France. A unicorn is a company that goes over 1 billion euros or $1 billion in value. Of the 7 in France, 4 of them are still supported and deployed by the Eurazeo Group. And of the largest fundraising transactions in 2018, well, we conducted all of them. We are the trusted partner. We are one of the first calls that teams make when they're developing entrepreneurial projects, in particular in the tech sector, which is the hallmark of Idinvest and has been over the past 20 years. That's the strength of our brand. And the second point I'd like to emphasize on Idinvest is that Idinvest has 20 years experience in accompanying entrepreneurs and startups with a vision. It has built up this unique digital ecosystem, and if we are able to ensure that this ecosystem of digital companies and startups works with the other companies in the Eurazeo Group before the merger of the teams, in other words, with multinational companies, SMEs in France, then we will have created something truly exceptional, and we will have created the transformation of the SMEs and bigger companies. So that's going to be our goal for the years ahead, and will create a huge amount of value for Eurazeo. So with Benoît Grossman, I'm going to hand over to Benoît through the video. He's one of the 2 founders of Idinvest, and to show you what is the digital environment of the Eurazeo Group.
On assiste aujourd'hui à une vraie révolution du monde digital. Cette révolution a démarré il y a plus de 20 ans aux États-Unis et s'est étendue ensuite au reste du monde, notamment en Europe et en France.
Aujourd'hui, les gens utilisent les canaux digitaux pour se déplacer, pour consommer, pour prendre leur rendez-vous. Les plus grosses sociétés dans le monde sont des valeurs technologiques.
On pense bien sûr aux fameuses GAFA, les Google, Amazon, Facebook et Apple, qui valent chacune entre 500 milliards et 1000 milliards de dollars, mais également les BATX chinoises, que sont les Baidu, Alibaba et Tencent.
En Europe, le nombre de licornes a été multiplié par 15 ces 10 dernières années.
Aujourd'hui, beaucoup de secteurs de l'économie n'ont pas encore été touchés par cette révolution digitale. Il reste encore beaucoup de choses à faire, notamment dans le domaine de la mobilité et de la santé connectée. Il y a donc plein de startups qui auront besoin de capitaux importants pour financer ces innovations au cours des prochaines années.
La croissance de ces sociétés est exponentielle et leurs besoins de financement sont colossaux, ce qui crée des opportunités pour nous, investisseurs.
Et ces investissements potentiels se traduiront naturellement par des retours sur investissement très intéressants.
Chez Eurazeo, nous avons été les premiers à saisir cette opportunité, qui nous a permis de prendre cette vague, et nous avons accompagné de grandes réussites, comme PeopleDoc, qui a été vendu l'année dernière pour 300 millions de dollars, comme Farfetch, qui a fait son introduction en bourse à New York et qui vaut aujourd'hui plus de 8 milliards de dollars, comme Doctolib, que tout le monde utilise, ManoMano, Content Square, Glovo.
C'est plus de 20 ans d'expérience associée au financement de plus de 150 sociétés, l'introduction en bourse au Nasdaq aux États-Unis de 5 sociétés, une proximité très forte avec les entrepreneurs font de nous un acteur incontournable du financement de l'économie digitale en Europe.
Aujourd'hui, ces startups nous choisissent pour notre expérience, pour notre proximité, nos racines européennes, mais aussi pour notre réseau international, avec nos bureaux en Chine, aux États-Unis, à New York, à Sao Paulo et plus récemment en Espagne.
Notre valeur ajoutée consiste bien sûr à choisir l'entrepreneur et l'entreprise, mais surtout à accompagner l'entreprise sur la durée de l'investissement, qui peut être assez longue, de 5 à 8 ans, et ensuite de travailler ensemble sur la sortie. Le rapprochement des équipes et des expertises d'Eurazeo et d'Invest font de nous un acteur clé du financement de l'économie digitale en Europe.
Nous allons consacrer toute notre énergie et tous nos moyens à jouer un rôle majeur dans cet écosystème.
Voilà.
So, thank you. It's true that we've grown and we've remained loyal to our identity, to everything that has ensured the success of Eurazeo in recent years. In other words, being an investor, an active investor. We've been extremely active, as you've seen in 2018. An investor who is close to his projects, with convictions, and the battles are won on the ground. And of course, the strategy is built at central level, but execution has to be conducted in the field. And what we have sought to do is to be an investor working on the ground. We've kept the human dimension, and we wanted each of our teams to maintain that human dimension in order to be close to the deal flow, close to our management teams, close to our entrepreneurs. 2018, looking beyond the sustained business, was a year when we continued to invest for the future. When we buy over 100 companies, it's not the new companies that have come into the capital of Eurazeo, the companies that we have refinanced through build-up operations, build-up transactions. 94 companies in addition to the 90 new companies that joined the group, because they represent build-up external growth for the existing portfolio companies. So that means that we're building the future. Philippe has told you the portfolio is still quite young. 50% of the NAV is represented by companies who joined the group less than 2 years ago. And we also make bets, choices through your investment teams on this segments and businesses of the future, which we think are very promising in terms of long-term growth. A few examples here are education, digital, payments. We have a lot of faith in these sectors because we think they're going to deliver growth for the Eurazeo, growth in the years ahead. Our method, as we have said, is proximity, teams with a human dimension, being close to entrepreneurs, and our compass in all this is results. What we want are results, and we measure our results in 3 ways. The results of the companies in the Eurazeo portfolio, results when we implement asset rotation, in other words, we dispose of the companies, and results in terms of the strategic acquisitions and deployment through results in the companies. Philippe illustrated the results and the EBITDA of the companies in our portfolio, plus 11% and plus 10% in 2018. Good results in a volatile, uncertain environment. Good results which are the result of choices made by your investment teams, and in particular the transformation work that we've been talking about, which is the underlying theme of this annual general meeting. So excellent results, a very active, dynamic year. We're extremely proud of this for all the companies in the portfolio. I'll give you a few examples and then I'll focus on one example. The examples are the acquisition of the Carambar. Thierry Gaillard, who is the CEO, is with us. This is a major transaction for Carambar. or for Grandir les Petits Chaperons Rouges, opening nurseries, in particular in North America and Canada, the United States. Another example is the acquisition of clinics in the Rhône-Alpes region and in Burgundy for the CSS group, or the acquisition through external growth or recruitment of digital talents for companies such as Trader, which is an American company, or Resfair, which is one of the Eurazeo SME companies. So I'd just like to dwell on Sequence. Sequence is better known as Novacap. We have renamed it Sequence. This is a transaction that we made in June 2016 at the time with Pierre Luzeau. Hello, Pierre. We had a battle plan, a strategic goal for the group, which is very clear, which was discussed with the management team before Eurazeo took a stake in its capital. And the goal was to refocus Sequence on its pharmaceutical business, delivering added value and enabling it to develop, to grow in its businesses, going beyond its European business, which was its business at the time. So we implemented that strategy with great confidence and with great success, with many external growth transactions. One of them was in the United States, BCI, which opened up the added value pharmaceutical market for the Sequence Group. This was a major shift. You can see the results with excellent growth in revenues of the group, which is run by Pierre Luzeau, plus 24% annual average growth since Eurazeo took a stake in the capital of this excellent company. We want results also when we dispose of companies. This is what we call asset rotation. It's the last phase in the creation of value by Eurazeo, which is what Olivier and Sophie were talking about. So when it's the time when we feel that we have done our share of the work in contributing to the growth of the company, creation of value. We did many disposals this year. This decision was made September 2017. It takes time to prepare it, and we really executed our disposals extremely well. All the teams here, I really want to thank them. They did a great job. The number of disposals that we did, the timing and execution are absolutely key, identifying the right buyers, and I'm proud of all of these disposals. I'm proud of Montclair, proud of Asmodee, proud of Accor Hotels, Vignal, People Doc, proud of Desigual, which was well negotiated by the teams. We decided to dispose because we decided to exercise our judgment, because it was time for Eurazeo to come out of these investments, because we couldn't change things anymore. So you have to be proud of these deals. Some of them are very significant in terms of size, others are smaller, but they're all important for the Eurazeo group, because each is part of one of our investment departments or divisions, and it's very important for us to be able to display success, returns, to illustrate the specific creation of value. This shows how we transform the companies, and it shows that we achieve capital gains when we dispose. And the third aspect are the strategic transactions. We have conducted many strategic transactions in 2011, and I like recalling Eurazeo PME as an example for two good reasons. One of them is that Eurazeo PME was the first acquisition, and we still remember, you always remember the first time. And the first time Eurazeo felt that, how about us at group level applying to ourselves the same result, as the same method as we apply for our own companies, in companies which are in different businesses. And that's what we do with Eurazeo PME in 2011. You know the results. The results are excellent. The financial results are excellent. And the most interesting thing is that we were able to achieve the interaction of the Eurazeo PME. and Olivier Millet is a member of the management board of Eurazeo. This transaction has been a success in every respect. This has given us confidence and the wish to continue building the Eurazeo group, either through organic growth or through external growth, and that's what we've been doing for some years now. Idinvest, as you know, has good results. The financial results are very good. The integration is going well. This is the beginning, but the results are such that we're very confident of what we will be doing in future with Christophe and Benoit. We have a strategic partnership with Rhône. Now, the two CEOs are on the west coast of America and in the Middle East. They apologize for not being with us. But this transatlantic positioning is very important for Eurazeo, in particular for Eurazeo Capital. And also we have extended the deal flow, which is so important in order to be able to choose to select from a broader deal flow, particularly regarding this transatlantic approach. CIC and the partnership with the Chinese Sovereign Fund, Mark has introduced this. He presented this. What I would add to that is that nothing happens by chance. We made the decision to open one of the first Eurazeo offices outside France in Shanghai. Now, some people might have found that rather ambitious because this was a quantum leap, well, more like a leap into the unknown in September 2013. And this ultimately, 6 years down the road, has produced a strategic partner with the China Investment Corporation. And apart from the amounts, which are significant, there's no better partner for the companies in the Eurazeo group in order to deploy effectively and with great ambition in China. And this is, in particular, is why I'm so proud of the partnership, because it's a decision that was made some years ago, and it has produced the result, which is this key strategic partnership for the Eurazeo group. So without doubt, this is a milestone, a fundamental milestone for Eurazeo, and our contribution from MCH is going to help Eurazeo PME to become more European. Eurazeo PME is mainly the partner for French companies, as you know many of them, and our ambition, with the help of MCH and also with development in Germany, is to enable Eurazeo PME to become perhaps Eurazeo SME, small and medium-sized enterprises. Eurazeo is a genuine gem because it has this unique model. We have fundamentals. We have the key drivers which over time have been key in producing value, namely the three pillars: independence, balance, and responsibility. And we have the strategic pillars, which are the excellence of the teams, the know-how that we're constantly bolstering, our international reach. You've seen that. You've been a witness to that over some years now. And the expertise, which I like calling haute couture, and haute couture know-how. There's no substitute for this when you're accompanying growth for companies like Carambert. It's adding this value with know-how that can adapt to whenever necessary, to each of our companies. And this is what makes us so unique, so unusual at Eurazeo.
Là, j'ai envie de vous dire merci.
I'd also like to say thank you to you. Thank you to Michel David-Veil and his family. Thank you to Jean-Charles Decaux and his family. And thank you to Jean-Pierre Richardson and his family. All three of them, with your families, in 2018, yet again showed true additional trust, faith above and beyond what you already showed. You've been on board for quite some time. And why am I making the point? Because the David-Veil family entered into a shareholders agreement basically last year at the same time when we met 12 months ago. which goes a step further in terms of the clear link between the David family and the Eurazeo Group. Because the Decaux family has also increased its holding in 2018, Eurazeo. That's a true show of confidence and support in a company's strategy and in the management team. And Jean-Pierre Richardson and his family. Here as well, this is very recent. The communication to the Financial Markets Authority, AMF, was made yesterday morning. They've boosted their link to the Eurazeo Group via a shareholders agreement. So I'd very much like to thank you, one and all. We couldn't really take the long-term view if we didn't have this support of family shareholders, entrepreneur shareholders that you are, each and every one. And to you, the private shareholders, individual shareholders, you represent 11% of Eurazeo share capital. That's tremendously important. I say to you all how proud I am to be in charge of such a beautiful and unique company as Eurazeo. And I'd like to share with you my belief. We've only begun. There's still a great deal of potential. We have set our sights very high. We haven't yet told you everything. And I will also say what my commitment is. I've got a daily commitment. I'm committed through my work. I've got a financial commitment here as well. Philippe mentioned this. All the management teams, your chief executive, the management board, the executive committee, all of us are shareholders in the Eurazeo Group. We have significant exposure to the company's earnings, its stock market performance, and our company's performance. That's my American side. You know, I've helped us develop in the U.S. This is very important to us to really prove our commitment and show that we've got a true alignment of interests. Thank you. Thank you for the support. You don't realize to what degree this is important for you to support us in our development, in our successes. Thank you.
Nous allons passer au contrôle.
We're going to move on to hear from the Compensation and Governance Committee report. Georges Projet is our new chairman. In the interim, we'll watch a video on the board's work and the committee work in 2018.
Le conseil de surveillance d'Eurazeo exerce le contrôle permanent de la gestion de la société par le directoire. Il consacre une part importante de son activité à la détermination des orientations stratégiques de la société et notamment à l'examen des projets d'investissement et de désinvestissement significatifs. Le conseil de surveillance d'Eurazeo rassemble des personnalités de premier plan dans différents secteurs d'activité, notamment la Direction générale d'entreprises internationales, l'expérience des métiers d'investissement, la gouvernance, la RSE et le digital. Nous vous rappelons que le CSE d'Eurazeo a nommé le 14 février 2019, pour une durée de 4 ans, Madame Viviana Krisch en qualité de membre du conseil représentant les salariés. Madame Viviana Krisch a rejoint Eurazeo en 2004. Basée à New York, elle occupe les fonctions de Managing Director d'Eurazeo Capital. Le conseil de surveillance est donc composé de 15 membres, dont 2 membres représentant les salariés, auxquels s'ajoutent 2 censeurs. Il comprend 7 membres indépendants. Le conseil de surveillance s'est réuni 5 fois au cours de l'année 2018, avec un taux de présence moyen de 88,33%. Il est assisté dans ses décisions par 4 comités spécialisés permanents qui totalisent 14 réunions durant l'année écoulée, avec un taux de présence moyen de 100% pour le comité d'audit, 96,7% pour le comité des rémunérations, de sélection et de gouvernance, 91,7% pour le comité financier et 87,5% pour le comité RSE. La mission du comité d'audit est d'assister le conseil de surveillance dans le suivi des questions relatives à l'élaboration et au contrôle des informations comptables et financières. En 2018, le comité d'audit a notamment traité de la production et de la communication de ces informations, de la gestion des risques et du contrôle interne. Le comité des rémunérations, de sélection et de gouvernance prépare les décisions du conseil de surveillance relatives notamment à la rémunération des mandataires sociaux. Le comité fait des propositions sur la composition des instances dirigeantes de la société. Il est chargé également d'évaluer le fonctionnement du conseil de surveillance. En 2018, le comité des rémunérations, de sélection et de gouvernance a notamment été consulté sur la détermination de la rémunération variable des membres du directoire, due au titre de l'année 2017, la politique de rémunération au titre de l'exercice 2018, le renouvellement du mandat de certains membres du conseil de surveillance et d'un censeur, la nomination de 2 nouveaux membres du conseil de surveillance et d'un censeur, et la recomposition du directoire. Le comité des rémunérations, de sélection et de gouvernance a formulé des recommandations au conseil de surveillance sur les grands principes encadrant la politique de diversité appliquée aux membres du conseil de surveillance et les objectifs de cette politique telle qu'elle ressort de la revue interne du conseil réalisée en 2018. Le comité financier a pour mission générale d'assister le conseil de surveillance sur les projets d'investissement ou de désinvestissement de la société. Le comité de responsabilité sociétale d'entreprise assiste le conseil de surveillance sur les questions relatives à la RSE afin qu'Eurazeo anticipe au mieux les opportunités, enjeux et risques qui y sont associés. Le comité RSE porte une attention toute particulière aux principes qui guident la stratégie d'investissement responsable, aux politiques et pratiques mises en œuvre par Eurazeo pour elle-même et ses sociétés en portefeuille pour appréhender les enjeux de la RSE sur les volets social, environnement, gouvernance et éthique notamment. Il vous est proposé par le vote de la 5e résolution de renouveler le mandat de membre du conseil de surveillance de Madame Françoise Mercadal de la Salle. Si cette résolution est adoptée, le conseil de surveillance restera composé de 15 membres et de 2 censeurs, dont 7 membres indépendants, 2 membres représentant les salariés et 6 femmes. L'âge moyen des membres du conseil de surveillance est de 58 ans. Eurazeo est convaincu que la gouvernance est un facteur essentiel de performance et de pérennité des entreprises. La mise en place d'une gouvernance exemplaire chez Eurazeo et dans l'ensemble des sociétés du portefeuille est un des objectifs prioritaires de la stratégie RSE d'Eurazeo.
Mesdames,
Ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, good morning. First of all, I would like to thank the members of the committee for their attendance. You saw their attendance rate. I'd thank them for their contributions to our work, and especially I'd like to thank you, Roland Dedouard. I took over chairmanship of the committee from him last February. The makeup of the committee and its work was just outlined for you a moment ago. I would like to emphasize the work done by our committee and report to you on this. I'd like to underscore, among other things, the fact that in the last part of 2018, we reviewed the operations of the Supervisory Board and the committee above and beyond being satisfied generally with the way the organizations had operated. We also had lengthy discussions with committee members, with Supervisory Board members, with members of management. In so doing, it was possible to make improvements to some degree, which are shown to you in the registration document, pages 154 and 155. Your committee henceforth also is called, part of its title is the Governance Committee. This is because we endeavor to constantly improve on your company's governance by implementing, among other things, best practices to be found in the market more broadly. Regarding compensation specifically now, fixed compensation, which you voted on in 2018, remain unchanged in 2019. These will not change during a period of less than 3 years. Let's look at variable compensation now. Variable compensation described in detail in your registration document, including percentages of reaching each of the criteria. Variable portions for the members of the management board on average 116.55% of their basic variable versus 126% last year. Growth in absolute value is due to the results of the various quantitative criteria 2018, also due to the increase 2017 versus 2018 in fixed compensation serving as a basis for calculating the variable compensation. You can remember there was a change in the composition of the management board. That's a reflection of this. Also, we indicate the variable base pay of Philippe Audouin went from 90 to 100% of the compensation. I'd also add each member of the management board is assessed on shared qualitative objectives and also on individual objectives, taking into account their specific roles. And these criteria are examined carefully by your committee, quantified whenever possible. The criteria, of course, include non-financial elements as well, pertaining, among other things, to CSR strategy at Eurazeo. Let's talk now about stock options and performance shares. Since 2016 and 2017, you validated grant conditions of vesting and acquisition of these performance shares and bonus shares. There's been no change. In February, members of the Management Board in position in February 2018 and members of the Management Board in position at the time of the grant decided to exchange wholly or partially in performance shares, specifying that Patrick Sayer didn't receive any securities during the grant due to his departure. This was allocation of 35,000 performance shares to Virginie Morgan, 16,000 shares to Philippe Audouin. Lastly, regarding the compensation policy, I outlined this for you. No changes being made in fixed compensation. Changes in baseline variable compensation were mentioned. We reviewed the quantitative criteria for variable compensation, among other things, to insert a new criterion relating to asset management business. This reflects the group's strategy. Furthermore, we changed the composition and weighting of these quantitative criteria, which apply to management board members. Furthermore, we applied the new recommendation by the AFEP-MEDEF Code, revised in June of 2018, having to do with implementation of possible non-compete clauses. To talk about the current year, we'll be endeavoring to review the succession plan for corporate officers, as well as performance conditions, stock options, and performance shares before allocations, which should take place at the beginning of 2020. Thank you for your attention. We'd ask the person representing Mazar firm to report to us on the statutory auditor's work in 2018.
Merci.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. The group of statutory auditors has issued 8 reports. They're all in the registration document submitted to you on entering this room. 3 reports pertaining to the ordinary shareholders meeting and 5 pertaining to the extraordinary shareholders meeting. Our 2 first reports have to do with the financial statements consolidated, pages 327 and 290 of the registration document. Your management board did the financial statements for your group, established in compliance with French accounting standards and IFRS standards. We certify these financial statements are fair and sincere and give a fair and accurate representation of the results of the fiscal period, as well as the financial situation and assets of your company and your group. In applying provisions of the Code of Commerce, our report outlines the key points from the audit, which in our opinion were the most important in auditing the financial statements and consolidated financial statements of the fiscal period, as well as answers to the audits we conducted. The key items from the audit are given in detail in the report. As you can see on the screen, there are 2 of these on the annual statements and 4 of them on the consolidated financial statements. The key items from the audit were discussed in detail with your company's management and with their audit committee. Our 3rd report has to do with agreements and regulated third-party agreements. In this report, we outline for each of the agreements the type of the agreement, the interest of this agreement for your company, such as those agreements that you are to agree to, the financial terms relating to these third-party agreements, and the legal and/or physical entities involved, natural persons or corporate entities. In the first section, we talk about the agreements previously authorized by your supervisory board and which are to be approved by you. This year, there are 4 new agreements for your approval. In summary, these relate to a change in commitments taken for the benefit of management board members pertaining to a non-compete compensation. Membership of Joint Investment Program CARICO Growth 2 implemented in 2015 and CARICO Growth 3 set up in 2018. Also establishment of the Joint Investment Program Growth 3, Croissance 3, as well as variable compensation for members of the Management Board in conjunction with fiscal 2018 who benefit from a job contract. Mrs. Birgit Morgan, Mr. Audouin, and Mr. Huet. In the second section of our report, we recall initially the agreements that you already approved at the previous shareholder meetings, which applied in 2018 and gave the specifics of their impact and the figures, and those that had no impact in the fiscal period. Next, we talk about agreements already approved during the AGM on 25 April 2018. Lastly, regarding our 5 reports for the extraordinary session of the shareholders meeting, we have no comment we need to make on information provided in the management board report or authorizations and transactions. Some of the final points haven't been set, so we have no view on those, nor on possible proposals of deleting preferential rights. We will do an additional report if need be, of course, if use is made of some of these authorizations by our management board. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to present the resolutions to you. Not too many resolutions this year, 21, 16 during the ordinary shareholders meeting and 5 during the extraordinary shareholders meeting. The resolutions are contained in your notice to the meeting as well as the registration document. Resolutions 1, 2, and 3 have to do with financial statements and consolidated statements and approving them as of 31 December 2018 and approval of agreements and commitments that were just alluded to a moment ago. Resolution 2, allocation of net income on the screen here, as well as payout of ordinary dividend. Philippe Audouin mentioned this €1.25 per share under the ordinary dividend. That dividend will be paid 8 Malais for any shareholder that is registered on May 8th. Free share 20 for every 20 shares held will take place on May 13th for shareholders registered on 10 May at the latest. Under Resolution 5, proposing renewal of the term in office of François Mercaz de la Salle. You can see her on the screen here. She's in attendance this morning. Françoise Mercaz de la Salle is already a member of the Compensation Committee and Governance Committee and part of the Finance Committee of the Supervisory Board. Resolutions 6 and 7, the Supervisory Board submits for your approval Compensation Policy 2019. Georges Projet just outlined this for you, having to do with Supervisory Board members and Management Board members. Resolutions 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, compensation to be made by virtue of fiscal 2018 to all of the corporate officers and senior managers. And these were alluded to by Georges Projet, and you can find the detail in the summary reports given in the notice to this meeting. Resolution 14, as mentioned by Georges Projet, we wanted to bring into compliance members of the Management Board with the changes made to the non-compete compensation for board members as per changes made to the French Commercial Code. Resolution 15, to renew authorization to make a share buyback with a ceiling of 10% of shareholders' equity. Features of the program are on this screen. Resolution 16, this is to renew an authorization to cancel the shares bought back under share buyback programs, again, in the statutory terms, and the ways and means are listed on the screen. Resolution 17, having to do with renewing an authorization enabling the management board to give rights to subscribe or purchase shares to corporate officers and or affiliates of companies. Authorization has to do with allocations over the 38-month span. 1.5% share capital is the limit currently. They could only be exercising these after a 4-year period. After that period, it'll also be possible to test the performance conditions pertaining to all these shares for managers, members of executive committee, and the main members of investment teams. The performance conditions can change this year pertaining to grants for next year, as mentioned by Jean Projet. Resolution 18, having to do with authorization similar for the free shares, free performance shares. You can read the main characteristics on the screen. Vesting period is 3 years, subject to presence. Performance conditions also pertain to 100% of these shares regarding members of the management board, executive board members, and main members of investment teams at Eurazeo. Lastly, the allocations at most make up 1.5% of share capital over 38 months of the lifespan of the authorization, and versus the previous, which is the current amount you can see on the screen. Resolution 19, renewal of the delegation of authority to do a share increase by issuing new shares for members of the company savings plan. Eurazeo employees and or affiliates, the maximum amount, 2 million euros nominal value. Resolution 20 to continue the authorization given last year if there's a public offering to issue subscription shares to be given free to shareholders. The limit is 100 million euros. Lastly, Resolution 21, the customary one, powers to carry out formalities. Thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Nicolas. Merci à tous. Et
Thank you all very much. So we will now open the questions and answers session. We're all here to answer, be it the senior managers or people from the companies. Good morning. I have 3 questions. Regarding your work on quoted companies, I'm referring to Montclair and Accor hotels. You're not very generous with shareholders, and last year there was a luxury goods company that distributed free shares. So would you consider for the next disposals of shares in listed companies, would you have a thought for the small shareholders? Because a luxury company such as Kering distributed Puma shares. So I would like the small shareholders to be able to benefit from this when there's a disposal. My second question regarding ePlanet, are they a competitor? Because looking at the Ingenico share price, this share price has gone down. Is this due to your work? And looking at Idinvest, how did you find this very rare gem, and how long did the discussions with the founders last? Thank you. Thank you. I'll start off with the last question. This rare gem, as you call it. Yeah, Christophe is laughing, and in the first row. Maybe he thinks he's not such a rare gem after all, but how did we find it? Well, we know each other. I was saying earlier how close people are to their environment. You need to know your competitive environment in order to be able to exploit opportunities. We identified Idinvest over several years before the transaction took place. We, in fact, were dreaming about it some years before. There was a controlling shareholder, BD, in Idinvest, who decided to sell 1 year ago. So we were ready for this. We had already had the discussion about the logic of merging, and as I said earlier, I think Christophe Van Bavière and Benoît Grossman chose Eurazeo as part of this disposal process. So that's for your question on Idinvest. Now, Planet and Ingenico. Well, Mark, otherwise, I mean, I can answer myself, but why don't you go ahead? Mark will talk about the comparison between Ingenico and Planet. Well, Planet is a payment service provider and has partners with payment terminals. So they're partners, vendors with softwares. There are new methods of payment emerging, and our role is to ensure that our solutions are accepted everywhere, whatever type of equipment we may be talking about for payment chains on these solutions. Thank you, Mark. I was just talking to Philippe, who will talk about disposals. It's very clear what you're referring to, the distribution of Puma shares to the shareholders of the group. Well, Moncler and Philippe Audien will answer in broader terms. Regarding the Moncler group, we felt that it was more effective for the group for us to sell in the last phase. We sold it in steps, in increments, further to the listing, and there was an ABB, a placement, and another placement in September 2015. We hadn't sold for some time, and we seized the opportunity of an attractive share price for Moncler. These decisions for listed companies are matters that we track daily, and without going into all the detail of how it's done, we take a decision at 2 o'clock, and the deal is implemented at 6:30. This is the best way for us, for the company involved. Moncler is a very good example of this. Rexel is another example. There are many examples. In other words, we exit the company with a responsible approach so as to not put any pressure on the share price of the company that we're selling. And it's a surgical approach because you have to seize your shareholders in many companies. You know how volatile markets are. And in broader terms, Philippe will shed light on the capacity to distribute shares in these listed companies. Well, Virginie has explained why it was the best way for Eurazeo to operate. In technical terms, for our institutional investors, in particular for our Anglo-Saxon institutional investors who account for about half of the capital, it's not always the best approach to distribute shares because they have to resell part of the shares that they've received as a down payment and also to pay tax in France. So this can be negative for some of the companies because there is a flow back onto the market in order to enable them to pay the précompte. And this is part of the discussions that we're having. We're emphasizing direct distribution to our shareholders. And with this dividend, you can acquire the shares that you want, which gives you greater freedom, of course. Can't see you very well. Can you help me? I am the founder of the minority.com website, and I select shares where I see a governance problem. So I talk about problems that individual shareholders may encounter. There are some problems. We'll start off with the organization of the meeting. Of course, it's perfect. This is a wonderful venue. But at the entry, when we arrived, we didn't have a registration document. And it's only the registration document that provides the consolidated financial statements, the income statement, where we have all the notes, all the information regarding remuneration, etc. So we didn't have that. And contrary to last year, there is no webcast of the AG. This is a shame for the shareholders who listened to you last year, who put their faith in you because they can't see what's going on or hear what's going on. So this is bothersome. The documents that we have are insufficient. That's the first thing. The second thing, concerning governance, you communicate on exemplary governance at Eurazeo. Well, I would say it's not exemplary at all. I'll give you an example of this. The AFEP-MEDEF code is not respected. It's not implemented on some aspects, and in particular due to the fact that the members of the management board have had their employment contracts suspended, which is contrary to the requirements of the AFEP-MEDEF code. The AFEP-MEDEF code recommends this because this ensures that you have corporate officers who are very committed. In other words, if they are guilty of, if there's misconduct on their part, they can't receive severance payment, their additional pension payment, and all the shares to which they may be entitled. And we had an interesting case this year with the departure of Patrick Seyer. Patrick Seyer had a golden parachute that I evaluated at 50 million. I think this is an absolute record for the time being. And for a company that represents 5 billion euros in market cap, you compare this to Airbus, which has 95 billion market cap, and you can wonder whether it's normal that the CEOs should have about the same amount when they leave. So this is important in terms of employment contracts and governance, because Patrick Seyer got his retirement, his golden retirement payment, because he will have 31 million euros in pension payments if he meets his life expectancy, and he will be entitled to this because he would not have had it if he had not had his employment contract. In other words, he left his job, and we've said we don't know why he left his job. It was to be replaced by Virginie Morgan, but what the MEDEF code says, when you have a departure which looks like a dismissal, normally you don't have any severance payment. Now you're going to be voting on 4 million in severance payment for Patrick Seyer. So when he left on the 18th of March, on the 19th of March, he regained his employment contract, and he was able to have his top-up retirement, which he will be able to enjoy. So on the 50 million, the supervisory board was really very generous because it awarded 15 million in bonus shares to Patrick Seyer, and stock options, which he wasn't really entitled to because there's a vesting period, and the supervisory board felt that for all his loyal years services, he should be awarded the 15 million, provided that the successors achieve the results that had been set for him. So my challenge to governance, I think you'll share some thoughts with me on that, and the raison d'être. And I have a third question. I'm not very happy with the way the statutory auditors present the regulated agreements, because in these regulated agreements, in addition to the excessively high remuneration of all the members of the management board, in addition to that, you have co-investments, which is, if I've understood correctly, and Madame Margot, maybe Mr. Pouget can explain this to me. He's in a better position to answer the question. I'd like you to tell us what these co-investments represent, because what they represent in what the statutory auditors are saying, that in addition to all the remuneration paid out to the senior officers, there are 83 persons who are talking. It's 83, it's not the figures you were given, it's 83 persons who work here. They also are entitled to co-invest. So when you, as a shareholder, when you invest in a particular stake, what you need to know is that there's a small fund for the corporate officers who are also going to invest. So I think this is money that's lent. I don't know. I'd like to know on what terms these co-investments are made, and the capital gains that are made by these funds. It's 600 million euros we're talking about here. It's not a small amount. These capital gains generated by the funds are shared with the Eurazeo staff, the members of the management board, which means that they really have a very nice pot here for the corporate officers. So for me, the raison d'être for Eurazeo, I mean, Virginie Mordaunt is very talented, that's great, but the raison d'être is to generate huge remuneration to its management team.
Alors, je vais laisser après Nicolas.
Well, I'll let Nicolas Huet answer. You have 3 points. The problems you encountered at the AGM on the registration document, the fact that the AG is not being retransmitted, broadcast on the internet, questions on governance and non-compliance with the recommendation of the AFEP-MEDEF code on the suspension of employment contracts for the corporate officers, and broader questions, or more specific questions, regarding the terms of the departure of Patrick Seyer. Well, in broad terms, first of all, and we'll go back in detail on your question, but regarding your last point, which are the carried programs, this is an obligation for the investment team members to invest out their own funds alongside Eurazeo to fully align interests between the Eurazeo, which is committed as a company and invests very significant amounts, the members of the management company, the Eurazeo team members, who also invest alongside Eurazeo in the companies by buying options. So these are the CARIB programs, which are widespread, very broadly used in the private equity industry. And this is also very important as a way of attracting and keeping talent. And the last level, to ensure the alignment of interest, because the management package, they invest using their own funds and they reinvest in the company, and this is full alignment, and you should be satisfied with this, because it's one thing to have a vision on strategic development, but it's something else to have the capacity and the knowledge that at all levels of the company, there's financial exposure. Of course, there are returns if the job is a job well done, and there is a minimum level of return, 6 to 8% annually, on an investment that enables the management team, both in the company as well as the management company, to have access to part of the capital gain. Those are the carried programs, and the goal is to align interests between the Eurazeo shareholder, Eurazeo as a company, the management teams, and the teams who manage and run the companies in which we invest. Nicolas, maybe I'll hand over to you to answer the first 2 points, and then Mr. Georges Projet, who's the chairperson of the Remuneration Committee.
Just add on the joint investment programs, the detail of the amounts invested is listed. The AMF requested this several years back, so for several years we've been putting this in section 3.5 of the registration document. Companies not lending money to employees to jointly invest. Plus, the appendices to the financial statements give you detailed notes having to do with the specific mechanisms and functioning of these programs. To come back to your first question, in the registration document, it's true. There are several issuers that no longer print the document. 465 pages, I believe, in the registration document. No hard copies in the introduction. It's available on our website. There are 50 copies that are here, though, and you were able to request this on entering the room. We also have very complete notices to the meeting. You have all the summary tables and so forth in the notice to the meeting. Most of you have it in your hands. The registration document was published a few weeks ago, and I believe you've read it in great detail. We could provide you with the hard copy version in addition. The AGM is on the internet. It is operating. The webcast is up. I said this in my introduction. It is working, and I believe this is confirmed by our technical team. So yes, the webcast is operating smoothly. Now the AFEP-MEDEF code, suspending the job contract. Yes, the code recommends to stop the job contract for the chief executives, chairman of the board, chairman of the management board, chairman of the board of directors. There's the possibility, as is the case for any other AFEP-MEDEF recommendation, to have a waiver. We publish an explanation. We give the reason for maintaining the job contract in this instance for the chairman of the management board. Other members, this isn't required for them. It's explained in the registration document, the section pertaining to waivers to the AFEP-MEDEF code. There are only 2 exemptions for last year, including the one for the compensation committee. As to the conditions for the departure of Patrick Sayer, I don't know if Georges Projet would like to comment on this point. Everything was disclosed last year. I'll let Georges build on this point if you'd like to. Yes. Answer on the form and also the substance regarding the form. The resolution for your vote today, having to do with Patrick Sayer, has to do with compensation for the 2-month period from the beginning of 2018, during which he was in his position. Last year, at the same AGM, the resolutions having to do with terms for departure of Patrick Sayer were disclosed in the registration document, were also voted on last year. That vote was very much carried by a great majority. On the substance, the arrangement for the top-up pension is a long-standing arrangement. Several of you are familiar with this. It, this year, was revised to align the conditions with recommendations in this financial market having to do with caps on compensation. Regarding stock options and free shares, bonus shares, these are subject to performance conditions. Oh, I'd also add a further point having to do with the pension arrangement and in compliance with the Macron legislation. This also entails performance conditions. Now on to the free shares and the stock options. These were voted on in previous fiscal periods. I indicated to you that we are currently conducting the necessary work to do in-depth examination, ensuring that the conditions for implementation of the stock options and free shares are in compliance with best practices in the marketplace currently. Lastly, regarding the conditions of the departure of Patrick Sayer, specifically the item you mentioned that the supervisory board wanted to give him the ability to maintain his options. The decision made, approved by the AGM since then, has to do with the results that were obtained over a long period by Patrick Sayer. Yes, on that point, to come back in on the text of the code you mentioned earlier, the code specifies there mustn't be compensation if there's failure. In the event of failure, it says. You talked about dismissal. That's not the right term. In the event of failure, it says. Last year, this AGM precisely established that we were far from seeing failure during Patrick Sayer's term in office. So I believe we've answered all of your points, if I'm not mistaken, but I'd be only too happy to have further discussion after the AGM. Thank you. Another question.
Juste là, au...
Next person would like to ask that question in row 3.
Il y en aura une autre ici.
There'll be a further one over there.
Bonjour.
Hello. I won't speak at length of this matter. It's certainly a question. People are very successful and worthy, but the other people are not as successful and apparently also get the pluses. And that's something that really bothers people. It's controversial, but I'll leave it at that. I very much liked the top quality of the presentations made by all the speakers this morning. All too often, they just read the teleprompters and don't feel you did that. Sometimes you looked at the teleprompters. More times than not, you look to the room during your presentations, and that's a good thing. We like that very much. That just shows that you know what you're talking about. Whereas sometimes it's not the case in other places. People just read out prepared presentations. Anyway, I don't want to talk all about the whys and wherefores of the results. You know what I think of the company. Let me ask you, though, to speak specifically to a point, something that you're not responsible for, clearly, but I believe companies need to address this. About Bourse Direct, you're familiar with the issues that various shareholders have had. Problems are cropping up over and over again. They don't see the printouts from the banks and the companies that manage the AGMs. It's not a problem just at Eurazeo. This has been more widespread this year. More so than in previous years. The documents simply don't get to us in a timely fashion. They're not registered and so forth. I've got personal proof of this. So what can be done about this? The bank is fully aware of this issue. We've discussed it at great length. Maybe they're not in a good position to criticize some of their colleagues. But the companies, yes. Companies could certainly say we're sick and tired of this situation. There are problems for people to register. Shareholders aren't happy. So something needs to be done to turn this around. Yes, you're asking for us as one of the listed companies, one of the issuers, to try to step in to make it easier regarding Bourse Direct. Yes, we'll see what we can do. Let me just emphasize, this year we sent out 3 times emails to 5,000 shareholders we had on our list, sending twice the notice to the meeting and the process to attend the shareholders meeting. I know clearly that's not instead of the work the banks need to be doing, but we wanted to make sure we well informed our shareholders, and we did so 3 times, as we've mentioned.
Non, mais on a bien compris.
Yes, we understand. You're asking us to use our clout. No microphone is on in the room.
Vous n'avez plus de micro, monsieur. On ne peut pas vous...
Your microphone is off, sir. We cannot hear you.
Nous avons pris bonne note de votre
We've duly noted your comment and your request. The points have already been made, yes. Thank you for giving me the microphone back.
autres sociétés du groupe Eurazeo qui sont elles-mêmes.
With other companies in the Eurazeo group. Yeah, I've understood. I understand what you're saying. Claude Laroche, I'm a private shareholder, a non-family shareholder. I'm talking about Doctolib. Since Doctolib was launched in 2013, Doctolib has sought to invent surgeries and hospitals of the future, making them more human and better connected. The platform states that it wants to improve the whole treatment process for patients and to improve their access to health professionals while reducing the waiting time. 6 years after inception, Doctolib has joined BlaBlaCar, Deezer, Venteprivé.com, OVH, Criteo in the very closed circle of young shoots in France whose market cap is above $1 billion, 880 million euros. Now, not everybody's happy with that success, starting off with some of the key players in the highly regulated health sector. They're talking about Uberization and expressing concern over data control. Despite this, the startup has been able to raise 150 million last March, bringing on board the American fund General Atlantic and the long-standing investors in Doctolib, PB France and Eurazeo. And it's in 2017 that Eurazeo invested for the first time in Doctolib and has contributed over the past 2 years 55 million euros in shares. Madam Chairperson, you have just come back from Silicon Valley, and this is 1 year ago. You were highly optimistic given the significant progress in health that you saw there. And you told BP France that I'm stating now that we are going to live for 120 or 130 years. Hence, 3 questions. Can Doctolib, which may contribute to ensuring that we live 120 or 130 years, has Doctolib become profitable? Second question, will you continue to accompany it in its phenomenal growth that seeks to make it double its size in the next 3 years? And the third and last question, are you considering listing it? Thank you. Well, you're extremely well informed on Doctolib. Thank you. And I spoke about it more briefly in my general comments on our ambition regarding investments in the digital ecosystem of Eurazeo. I don't think Doctolib will help us to fulfill that life expectancy forecast of 120 or 130 years. That's what some of the researchers are saying. This singularity in university based on the theory of abundance and longevity. But Doctolib does a wonderful job. Many of you use that to facilitates things for the patient, for the doctors, and it provides a more connected experience in this field and reduces costs for doctors who no longer need to have a secretariat because all this is managed for them. It's outsourced. There are clearly some improvements that should be made. An acquisition that was done, which was Mon Docteur, which was part of the Lagardère group, which lends additional strength to the Doctolib Group, a lot of European ambition, and indeed a commitment by Eurazeo, 55 million euros in 2 phases, 2017, and with GA and BPI, because we took part, we were among the investors. I can't answer all the questions, because on some of the questions, it will be confidential given the type of company it is, but what I can tell you is there may come a time in the development of a company where we feel that it's ready or not ready for a public listing. We know what the success factors are to enable the company to be able to deliver consistent growth for its shareholders. So I'm a great believer in the need to be multi-regional, competence to be able to deliver results over time as a listed company. This is important for a unicorn and for a more mature company. And what Eurazeo will Eurazeo continue to accompany the group, Doctolib? Well, why not? We have the capacity to do so. And I've said that in the rapprochement with the Idinvest team, the actual project is to become a European leader in supporting and financing companies of all sizes. And we can do this either through each of our teams or by providing an investment opportunity, such as Eurazeo Capital, for example, to accompany them. So this is not a forecast I'm making, but it's I'm setting out what we might do. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead. I have a question. I'm a private shareholder. I have a question about calculating the NAV as of 31 December 2018. It's a special date. That's share prices had plummeted at that point, but since then they've gone back up. I was wondering, could you gauge the impact on the net asset value, the impact of the plummet, and then the rebound of share prices? That's a first question. I have a second one. I was also wondering about CSR. You have a company called Caramba producing sugar, which is pernicious on people's health and cavities, children's cavities, and so forth. Is it really necessary to keep the company in the portfolio, considering we have CSR criteria that are so ambitious as those that you've outlined for us? Another question. You say you, as of 2017, started a policy of actively divesting to yield to tap into capital gains. Now the stock market's ticking back up. Could you confirm you'll be continuing with your policy of divestments? And possibly, are you considering doing IPOs? We're hearing from the marketplace that after disappearing around the end of 2018, now there's a return of IPOs and stock exchanges. Would you like to move into this area? A last question. Are you paying careful attention to disruptive phenomena, major shifts, major changes taking place in our societies, such as a shift from diesel cars to electric cars and the knock-on effect that can have on some businesses? Or what about artificial intelligence and its impact on driverless vehicles and so forth? Another point. Currently, we're seeing a trend toward highly innovative medical solutions. Terratillon recently got an authorization and approval for treatment of varicose veins. It's a treatment whereby ultrasound a concentration of ultrasound is used. I'm wondering, do you look into this type of thing as well?
Merci beaucoup.
Yes, thank you very much for all those questions. Philippe Baudouin will begin, fielding your question on the net asset value methodology for calculation and impact of the end-of-year changes. Yes, thank you for the question. I'd specify regarding listed companies, we evaluate at each closing of A&V twice a year, 30 June and 31 December. We value them based on averages, 20 trading days averages, precisely to avoid any very short-term fluctuations. To specifically answer your question, 2017 listed companies, 1.55 billion worth at the beginning of the year, lost 177 million during 2018. That's about the 10% I mentioned earlier when I gave you our NAV. This represents approximately €2 per share, taking account of the number of Eurazeo shares. Currently, based on an update of listed companies, not updating the other portion of our NAV, we've basically gotten back the €2 per share, recovered the €2 per share. That's my point on impact of listed shares on the NAV. On Carambar, to comment on that point, I think possibly your conclusion's too decisive, asking whether we should actually keep the company. But you are right, certainly in asking the question. Sophie Flack, earlier she gave Carambar as an example. She used World Strides as an example, talked about what we'd done in the area of CSR. If we'd taken Carambar as an example, we would have told you that we looked in detail at the recipes. We had talks with management teams back then. Thierry Gaillard came on board later. You know, it was a carve-out we did, buying out the entire candies business and chocolates with Poulain from the Mondelez Group. Thierry Gaillard came on board during the closing, and that was time-consuming. With him and his teams, we're now working on developing new recipes. Two objectives in mind here: less sugar, possibly no sugar. This will be an ongoing process. We can't all of a sudden change all the products, but the new launches will have that objective in mind. Plus, we're thinking of completely organic products. Recently, the crema candies were launched as part of the group. It's Carambar Poulain Crema, and they're completely organic. So this is going to be time-consuming, but the work's underway. We've identified these various points. Versus some other examples given by Olivier, companies where we decided we would not invest in them because we didn't think we'd have the capacity to change practices, recipes, or supply chain, or what have you. Those are major CSA concern. Whereas here, with Carambar, we've identified the challenges, and with the management team, we feel that we do have the capacity to change this over time. But you're entirely right in raising the question, without mentioning other points. Think of confectionery and cookies, which can also be problematic from a health point of view, and obesity and so forth. That ties in with the last question you raised, asking what we're doing to look at disruptive changes. Are you using AI and so forth? Are you able to contribute to your vision of disruption to your companies? Well, certainly we could do more. That's our intention. We said this earlier. Once we've been successful in truly establishing a special link between companies in our portfolio PM, SME Capital, and the companies in I'd Invest Digital, I'd Invest Smart Cities, and Eurazeo Growth, we will have stepped up our ability to increase awareness, at least, and possibly bring disruption into the more conventional companies, more mature companies. And some of the companies are fairly young, but to bring us some disruption. We've already done this. I'd like to ask Olivier to recall what we did at Headsphere, for instance. We brought in disruption to the company itself. Yes, briefly, Headsphere is a company that organizes urgent transportation in industry. A few years back, faxes were being used to exchange orders. It's a platform. Order from industry, then sent on to shipping companies. Currently, they've speeded up the whole process, and there's been real disruption. The company just provided its own disruption, creating automatons and investing about 8 million euros sanctuarized to make specific investments in technology to put together alternative offerings. A portion of activity that transits directly through the group's digital offering, if memory serves, would be around 40% henceforth. So really speed it up. Digital disruption. Well, some companies are born of that and start as digital companies. Very early on in the process, they're digital, and we help them grow. This is work done by the Idinvest teams in the venture portion. Then you've got companies that we call more traditional companies, and we support them along with the digital teams, the Eurazeo IT teams. We assist them during times of change.
Là, on voit qu'il y a une question ici, un peu au fond, mais j'ai l'impression qu'il y avait aussi...
Well, I think, sir, we'll give you a microphone. Thank you. I'm a private shareholder. I was somewhat surprised by the fact that you did not cover one matter amongst all the matters that you covered, which is the impact of which is the link between our global relations and world events. First of all, I think that there are some matters of interest regarding China. Well, all very well, but this raises the issue of national security, strategy, and many economic problems, but also strategic matters. My concern here, and please don't answer because it's a sensitive matter, but my concern is that subsequently we will have some very nasty surprises given what our Chinese partners are likely to do. Now, please don't answer, but just take this on board as a question that I'm asking. And the second point, it seems that we have had links with the UK, and I've heard reference made to something which I believe is called Brexit. Well, you didn't say anything about Brexit, which is understandable because to some extent this matter was not really at a mature phase when you were preparing the AGM. We don't know what's going to happen to Theresa May. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of the terms of the Brexit, etc. But nevertheless, my question is, if you're able to do so, could you use your influence at Eurazeo to firmly convey what concerns the interests of our country and that of the shareholders? So those are the points I felt that I had to share some thoughts with you. And the last item, the last point, is as follows. You provided us a long time ago. You awarded us shares in ANF. Now, for reasons that I'm not aware of, I have no inkling about what was behind this, but we do not have any information about what is going to happen to the shares that were distributed and which I think are part of the ICAD strategy, which is the company that took over INF, and they're not considered as being important. So what are you going to do with those shares? So I'm sorry, I may have gone on for too long, but thank you for hearing me out. Thank you. Thank you, sir. ANF, maybe? Philippe? Briefly, on your 3 points, I'd like to respond to what you said about China. The fund that we refer to that has been launched, is a fund that's going in the right direction. In other words, the goal is that it invests in French and European companies and to help them grow in China. It's not China taking control here. And point number 2, Brexit. We don't have much direct exposure. Of course, we've followed very closely the developments on the UK market. We have made an investment, and we can tell you about that. We bought a great building near St Pancras in London. Point number 1, we benefited from the decline in the currency. Number 2, the building is very well situated near St Pancras station, so if companies do leave London, we think that they will still need to keep a presence in the UK, and in that case there'll probably be a benefit for them to be near the Eurostar, which is St Pancras station. And of course, we all have this very much it's uppermost in our mind. And last point, ANF. We sold ANF to ICAD. ICAD has been absorbed, so you should have ICAD shares. And this is no longer in the scope of Eurazeo. Given the time of day, I think we can take one last question. Some private shareholders, individual shareholders are leaving.
Yes, hello. From the Association for Individual Shareholdership, 3 questions. They'll be quick ones. Firstly, on governance. Do you intend, considering you're constantly in touch with many stakeholders, are you considering setting up a stakeholders committee? Question number 2, you said that for the sake of future growth, you're in favor of digital education and payments. Do you confirm, and what will be the extent of this? Question 3, has the market really understood all the efforts that you made in the area of CSR? I'll answer on one of the points. By way of illustration, that 2018 had been a year where we focused on investing in the future. I gave as an illustration a couple of examples of areas that we'd selected the Eurazeo Investment Company as buoyant for the future. Education. We feel we've got 3 investment educations currently, 2 in Europe, 1 in the US. The Little Red Riding Hood, Le Petit Chaperon Rouge, Grandir, child care, and then 2 hotel management schools in Switzerland, Lyon-les-Roches, and then World Strides, which we mentioned earlier. Educational trips, mainly for young American students currently, and more global in the future, I hope. I hadn't even mentioned health care, though. I talked about digital businesses, and I focused on investments. I'd invest in digital, and I'd invest growth, and Eurazeo growth. I talked about payments, a world we're very familiar with, the importance of digitalization of payments, something that's extremely important and highly visible, of course, in China. All payments, as you know, Many of you know many payments are made through WeChat. We're lagging way behind in Europe and in the US in this area, this major change, this disruption in terms of methods of payment. I could have also mentioned healthcare. Not only have we already been making investments in healthcare broadly, Peter's Surgical we talked about, Doctolib that you mentioned in great detail, Intech, a health company in Eurazeo PME portfolio, and the most recent, you saw the announcement of the acquisition operation was confirmed yesterday in our press release, closing an investment by Eurazeo Capital in Dork, a Dutch company, very much on the cusp of new tech, developing equipment and consumables for ophthalmology surgery. We feel that this is very promising in terms of prospects for development. They're very strong in Germany and the Netherlands, and then France, so several European countries. They've started in the US. Just by illustration, I mentioned these promising sectors for the future. There are others. I'd go so far as to say what we've revealed is substantial. We've got many other things we're working on as well, other sectors where we intend to invest in upcoming years. Maybe, if you don't mind, unless Philippe or Nicolas or Olivier would like to say, but let me say, the Stakeholders Committee, Nicolas, what do you think about this? Yes, some issuers do establish that type of committee. We began with the CSR committee. We heard a presentation by them earlier. Maybe a Stakeholders Committee might be more relevant in industrial or direct services. These might be for our subsidiaries versus at the Eurazeo level. The stakeholders, of course, certainly you've got the government authorities and some of the suppliers, but it's not the same. At Eurazeo, we don't necessarily have to have the same type of relationship as other companies that have a very large supplier base. We could consider this under the supervisory board and the CSR committee and look into this conceivably, but off the cuff, when we talked about it last year, that was the idea we had in mind. We might not be the right company that would need to establish that type of committee, but other companies such as Ellis, Europcar, and others may make sense for them to set up a stakeholders committee. One last question on the CSR market. If the overall marketplace has understood all the work that we've done in CSR over the past 10 years, I would say it's a work in progress, market realization. To give you some good news, the institutional investor market is ever more interested in CSR. With Philippe Audouin in Paris and abroad, more and more, we have road shows with institutional investors that are dedicated to talking about CSR considerations. Historically, investment funds weren't in the front lines on these subjects. So there's sort of a waiting period between what's expected of us and what we're actually already doing. I think the best is yet to come. So as we said earlier, financial performance is the #1 criterion to value, and that's equally true for Eurazeo. Our financial performance is of paramount importance, but at the same time, I would say the fundamental work we're doing in our companies in our portfolios are also evaluated by the marketplace. Thank you very much. We're going to move on now to voting.
Au vote des résolutions.
And the resolutions now.
Enfin.
Bien, bon, tout d'abord, je vous confirme le...
So, we have the quorum, the final quorum, 77.89% of the capital represented, 1,280 shareholders who have voted or given proxies representing 57 million shares. In terms of voting right, that's 80.97%. So, I won't read out each of the resolutions, if I may. Briefly, you have the... ladies and gentlemen, your remote control device is strictly personal. The number of votes that you hold is loaded onto the device, and all you need to do is lose the green, yellow and red keys.
Un vote pour. La touche jaune correspond à un vote abstention. La touche rouge correspond à un vote contre. Après la lecture de chacune des résolutions, il sera immédiatement procédé à son vote et il sera déclaré « Le vote est ouvert ». À cet instant, vous apercevrez sur l'écran un rectangle vous indiquant le compte à rebours des secondes dont vous disposez pour voter. Lorsque le compte à rebours sera achevé, il sera déclaré « Le scrutin est clos » et il ne vous sera alors plus possible de voter. L'affichage des résultats s'effectuera sur l'écran de projection quelques instants après la clôture du scrutin. Dernière précision, merci de bien vouloir éteindre vos téléphones portables pendant la durée du vote et de restituer les boîtiers à la sortie de la salle.
Bien. Première résolution.
Resolution number 1, approval of the corporate financial statements for 2018. Voting open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting over. Resolution adopted. Resolution number 2. Declaration of the result and dividend payment. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution number 3, approval of the consolidated financial statements for 2018. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution 4, approval of regulatory commitments and agreements under the Commercial Code. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. 5th resolution, renewal of the mandate of Madame Françoise Mercadet de la Salle as a member of the Supervisory Board. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution number 6, approval of the principles and criteria for setting the remuneration for members of the Supervisory Board. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution 7, approval of the principles and criteria for remuneration setting for the members of the Management Board. Vote is open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution number 8, approval of the remuneration paid to Mr. Michel David Valle in 2018. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution 9, approval of remuneration paid for 2018 to Madame Virginie Morgon, Chairperson of the Management Board. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution 10, approval of remuneration for Mr. Philippe Audouin. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution number 11, approval of remuneration for Mr. Nicolas Huet for 2018. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution 12, approval of remuneration for Mr. Olivier Millet. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution 13, approval of remuneration paid to Patrick Sayer for 2018. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. 14th resolution. Consistency with the new, compliance with the new AFEP-MEDEF code. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution 15, authorization for buyback by the company of its own shares. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. 16th resolution, authorization to reduce the capital by cancellation of shares bought back by the company. Resolution. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. 17th resolution. Granting of options to the corporate officers and employees. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Number 18, same type of authorization for distribution of bonus shares to employees and corporate officers. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Number 19, delegation of authority to the management board to increase capital. Resolution. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Number 20, delegation of authority to the management board to authorize it to issue warrants and distribute bonus shares to shareholders. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Resolution 21. Last one. Voting open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this AGM is now over. I'd like to thank you for attending and for your loyalty. And for adopting the resolutions. And we can now meet for a drink, and we look forward to seeing you next year on the 30th of April 2020.